Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title. It's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God, so we cannot a stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim,
right,
or the man who's being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
In the studio, now you don't need to register nothing. You don't need, we can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Money is something we all deal with, but how many of us truly understand it? What if you could make better decisions with your money? Decisions that secure your future, protect your family, and bring you peace of mind. I'm Darren Jacobs, and I'm here to help you make sense of your dollars. Welcome to Dollars and Cents, the show that breaks down the financial world in ways that matter to you. No jargon, no confusion, just real conversations about money, your money. So join me every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on WESN for Dollars and Cents.
WESN.
Good morning and welcome to AM Prime on WESN. I'm Naomi McNish.
And I am Jada McLeod.
So this morning we are talking about a topic that we kind of touched on recently in a previous episode we did this in our news update. So this was the F1 visas with Trump and international students.
Where students were getting kind of uneasy because they were feeling as if their chances to go abroad to study, specifically in the U.S., were being taken away from them. So we were continuing to monitor what's the updates coming out of the White House regarding the revocation of F1 visas for international students. And today we have a bit of an update. So we are sitting down with somebody that you already know, you all know and love. So U.S. President Donald Trump, just for some context, announced a pause on student visas, a move that could reshape international education flows, not just affecting Trinidad and Tobago, but other countries, China, Australia, everywhere else. While many are reacting with concern, our guest today sees potential. Mr. David Abdullah, political leader of the Movement for Social Justice, believes this shift may open new doors for regional institutions like UWI, UTT, and other local universities to step up and offer viable world-class alternatives. From these statements, we must ask ourselves what this reality would look like. I theorize with questions like, can the Caribbean truly position itself as an education destination? What would it take, and are we ready for it? So good morning, Mr. Abdullah. How are you doing?
Good morning, Jada. Good morning, Naomi, and good morning to all who are tuned in. I'm well, thanks. And thank you very much for having me. I don't know that everybody loves me, but
well, you're no stranger to this show, so
yes,
we love you.
Yes, and we do appreciate you coming on. So tell me, did I get in that synopsis that I just gave? Did I get your views correct?
Yes, you did. In other words, you know, the Chinese character for crisis is the same as for opportunity. So what appears to be or can be a crisis can be turned into an opportunity if we are forward thinking, if we have a sense of vision, and if we have the capacity to seize the moment, seize the opportunity. And I certainly believe that Trinidad and Tobago does. And the Caribbean generally, we do have tremendous assets which have been built up over a long time in terms of our tertiary education capacity, University of the West Indies, and then of course here in Trinidad and Tobago we have UTT, University of Trinidad and Tobago, there's COSTAT, there's Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies, all are publicly funded institutions, and then there are many private institutions as well. So I do believe this is an opportunity for us, yes.
So President Donald Trump he's referred to as a sort of an isolationist type of president. Do you think that this move was a move for the U.S. to sort of keep themselves away or protect themselves from the rest of the world? How do you consider this move?
Okay, so there are about 2 or 3 factors playing into Trump's decision. One is an attack on U.S. universities, major ones, the Ivy League universities as they're called, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Columbia. And he has gone after those universities because there were protests on those campuses against the genocide by Israel of Palestinians and the horror that is Gaza, which is continuing. And so part of the very right-wing, if you want to call neo-fascist agenda in the US, which Trump is pursuing, is to clamp down on protest actions, in particular protest actions like in solidarity with international causes. And there are other kinds of attacks as well. You said these universities, the lecturers, professors there are too left, what he calls left, what the Americans call woke, which I don't think is another term I like to use, but in other words, teaching history and politics and so on from the reality and from the standpoint of people who have been victims of enslavement and oppression over the years, and he's very much opposed to that. So he's going after those universities. Many of them have caved in, but Harvard has stood up. And so he then says, okay, we want to engage in a battle with China. And therefore, Chinese students and other students from other parts of the world must not come and benefit from American university education and then go back to their countries and strengthen their countries at the expense of the United States. So he wants to ban Chinese students, in particular graduate students and others. So that's another element of the attack. And I think this third one, where he's now saying put a pause on all student visas and do background checks and so on, is a mechanism in fulfillment of the first two objectives. And that has put, you're right in your introductory remarks, it has put Trinidad and Tobago nationals who have either already gotten approval to get university. And I'm aware, for example, of students who are in the United States legally, they have a student visa, and their universities are telling them, listen, don't go home for Christmas, because we're not sure if you could get back in. I don't know if you've heard that story as well.
Some context for everyone. So what Donald Trump's administration is doing, they put out a memo saying that they would be adding more social media vetting for students who would like to come and study in the U.S. As Mr. Abdullah was just saying, with the rise of pro-Palestine protests, the Trump administration sees it as a sort of free speech isn't being protected. So if you are pro-Israel, you can't speak on that. So this is where this whole memo is coming from, the whole move to do this is coming from. I know some people were a bit, they misunderstood where we were coming, where we were coming from. So they sent out a memo saying that to the embassies around, U.S. embassies around the world to stop scheduling appointments for student visas as they prepare to expand social media vetting of such applicants. This would, of course, have significant implications for embassies and consulates. So right now, they aren't taking in any more schedules. So, yeah. If you have a scheduled visit already, you can go ahead. You can go ahead. A visa may be approved for you, but if you were still trying to get something on the books, you're now looking into it, you had high hopes of studying abroad, at this point in time, you will not be allowed to proceed further. Yeah? So,
yes. Yeah. And that really is a clamp down on people's rights. Now, what the American culture is right now, political culture, the dominant political culture of this Trump-led right-wing administration, is different from our political culture. So, even constitutional rights in the United States in terms of freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and that kind of thing, the freedom of the press, are being challenged. So he's going after the press that, carries reports of that he's not happy with. He attacks judges. I don't think he's attacked Supreme Court judges yet. He's close to it from what I saw yesterday from CNN. But he certainly attacked judges at the federal level that operate at the state and local levels. So he's attacked judges. He's attacked the press. He's attacked universities. In Florida, Governor DeSantis, the state legislature in Florida some time ago passed legislation. You can't teach about Jim Crow. Jim Crow was that period of American history after the end of the Civil War and the slavery, when African Americans were being lynched and denied their rights as citizens, could not vote and things like that. So all of those things now are deemed not to be something that you could teach children about or speak about. So this is really neo-fascism, and therefore social media, okay, there may be some students who might, or some individuals within the United States as well, who might engage in linking up with social media sites that are totally inappropriate. It could be pornography, or it could be around, acts of actual terrorism where people are glorifying killing. to deny people a visa because you supported protest action, for example, or you support Black Lives Matter, or you support, the peace in parts of the world, those things, and therefore denying student visas because of that really is a denial of people's rights.
Would
And
you
so
consider being hypocritical?
Yeah.
Would you consider being hypocritical? Like he's saying that he wants to allow free speech, but then he's banning it in the same context. Would you agree?
Yes, it's totally hypocritical, and but the United States political culture has long been hypocritical, so the Constitution talks about everyone being equal, but then people in the United States have been historically discriminated against if you're a person of color. So the U.S. is full of hypocrisies. They want to give equal opportunity to people, but the economic policies, particularly over the last 25 years, have resulted in a few people getting humongously wealthy, the billionaire class and the multi-billionaire class, while others are struggling in poverty. They don't have universal health care, so that if you don't have money and you don't have some kind of health insurance, you just cannot get access to a hospital and health care. So, in many respects, the U.S. is a society that is extremely, extremely hypocritical. Yes.
I don't particularly think, I don't particularly agree that it's hypocritical because yes, it could have been done in a better way, but it's more to control, kind of have some sort of control over what you allow into your country, So I think he's more protecting the Americans than say, well, no, free speech, y'all have to, if you're pro-Palestine, if you're pro-Israel, you're not going to get a student visa. I don't think it's that, because it's not black and white. It's just there's a gray area, and he's trying to protect the people.
Well, no, I know it's part of an ideological position because, for example, because a particular television station carried a report that he was not happy with, he gave out an instruction to ban them from attending White House press briefings. And there's a major network, I think it was ABC or one of those major networks, if I'm not mistaken. So that is not about protecting Americans from people coming from outside. That's an American broadcaster that has been denied access to White House press briefings. So there's a political and ideological position there. And Trump is especially aggressive with it. And this is why, for a sitting president to say that particular judges, and he calls them all kinds of names. Can you imagine if the prime minister of a Caribbean country was to accuse the chief justice and other judges of all kinds of things and call them names and say they don't know the law and they're this, they're that, and the other? That is an attack on an institution of state, which is supposed to be a separate branch of the state, and so on. That's why I'm saying it's hypocritical in the sense that there are people in the United States. Not all Americans are hypocritical. I'm not just saying that, but the American political culture has become very hypocritical because you have members of the U.S. Congress who are Republicans who know that those things are wrong, but will say nothing because they simply want to get reelected in the next election cycle. And in order to be re-elected next election cycle as Republicans, they believe they have to have the endorsement of Trump. So they wouldn't say anything against him, even though they know that he's doing something wrong. And that is hypocrisy and opportunism. And that is what I'm speaking about. Yes. And so ironically, what the policy is doing with respect to trying to attack Ivy League schools, shutting down their grants. So you want to shut off their federal funding because you don't like their policies, and then you are banning students from coming from outside. What you're in fact doing is undermining, ironically the U.S. is undermining its own capacity to develop its human resources and its capacity in terms of research and innovation. They're undermining it to the point where they're going to become less and less competitive in the global economy and in technology and so on. And that is what they're in fact doing. So rather than strengthening the US, it is going to ultimately weaken the US. And this is not my view. There are many commentators who have been writing about it, and academics and other people in the United States have written about this development.
So
But coming back to Trinidad and Tobago, yes.
Yes, coming back to Trinidad and Tobago. We could theorize. Caribbean nationals, the amount of students that go away to study on an annual basis, I believe the number is up there about, say, 10,000, 9,000, 11,000. So I'm going to stop on 10,000 there. But how many of those students actually come back to their home country to give back whatever first world education that they would have received? A lot of students, based on my personal experience, tend to stay over there. So what exactly is Trump's, why does he say it's a bad thing, or he doesn't want the skills going back to the country? Yes, a number of students do come back because they need to, but a lot of them, if given the opportunity, they would stay and give to the United States economy.
Yes. And I simply would say to those students that this is not a good time to be a person of color in the United States. And the quality of the education. Now, of course, there are universities which are really, really excellent, the Ivy League schools and a number of others. And many people went to the US years ago to study because the opportunities for tertiary level education in the Caribbean were quite limited. Because, you know, our university system only started up in the late 1940s and the intake was quite small. But with the expansion of tertiary education, and particularly, well, I'm speaking now more particularly of Trinidad and Tobago and some other of the islands, where there is government-supported tuition up to tertiary and including tertiary level. And our universities have expanded the range of courses. I mean, when I went to university, for example, the course offerings were quite limited compared to what exists now, so that you do have a much wider opportunity to study in a subject area which you are particularly interested in. Admittedly, there are areas of academic work which our universities have not yet developed a capacity to deliver. And in those areas, in those subject areas, yes, going abroad is perhaps your only option. But in many respects, people go to do courses of study which they can very well do at the University of the West Indies quite well. And UE is a good institution. It is highly ranked globally, and it is a good institution. And therefore, you know, parents who then had to struggle, even if you're on a partial scholarship, to find money at 6 point whatever it is to 1 to send for tuition and accommodation and other expenses. That's very difficult. It's much easier actually to do to educate your children here in the Caribbean. So I think this is something that we have to focus on. And I want to also say, you know, that we possess resources that universities abroad do not have. So at St. Augustine, just to use that example, there are collections, Sam Selman collection, C.L.R. James, as part of his collection is here, the Dr. Eric Williams collection, and there are others. And I was talking with Professor Rhoda Reddock the other day, and she was indicating that there are lots of other papers that have been lodged at St. Augustine are continuing to be lodged at St. Augustine. So we therefore have, and I'm sure the same thing applies at Mona and Caville, so that we in fact have a repository in University of the West Indies. I don't think UTT has yet developed that, but they may be on their way to doing so. We have a repository of information that is available for research that is not available anywhere else. And so we need to be encouraging foreign students to come into Trinidad and Tobago and other parts of the Caribbean to do research. And they may come in for a short period of time, 3 months or 6 months or a year, depending on what their research agenda is. And that is what we should also be encouraging. So we should not only be a center of excellence for teaching and learning, but also become a unique center of research. In other words, if you want to research about cultural traditions, and where else will you go to know about steel band and calypso and a whole set of other things like that, other than Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm suggesting, if you're looking at Pan-African studies, for example, George Padmore, C.L.R. James, Henry Sylvester Williams. They were all Trinidadians who played a critical role in the Pan-African movement in the early days. So we could provide unique insights, not only to things and developments that were specific to our countries, but had global impacts as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think that our local institutions would be ready or prepared to potentially absorb any influx of students, I mean, locally or regionally?
Yes, because as I said in my press conference, what has happened is that the student enrollment in all of our tertiary institutions has declined. It declined partly because of COVID, but it also declined, and therefore people went online, the online thing. So there were classrooms that now became available. It also declined when the government decided to remove 100% gate financing for all students and said, okay, there's now a means test, so only those whose circumstances are very difficult will get 100%, and other people get 50%. I think you can get up to 75% depending on your family circumstance. So that caused a decline in the student intake. And postgraduate studies have also not gotten, I think the gate does not apply to postgraduate studies either. And so the student intake has declined significantly. And so the universities do have spare capacity to absorb new students. That certainly is true. And I'm sure that in terms of accommodation, that as a result of a lot of classes going online and the drop in student enrollment, that there's also, accommodation facilities in and around the university campuses. And interestingly, in the People's Partnership Manifesto of 2010, from memory, and I forgot to look at it last night when I was in my office, but from memory, and this was a proposal made, I think, by Mr. Dukaran and the COP when the COP contested in 2007. It was brought forward into the Partnership Manifesto of 2010. They proposed that the St. Augustine area become a university city in the same way that you have Oxford or Cambridge, or you have Boston with Harvard and MIT and other universities in a fairly close cluster. That St. Augustine has, a cluster of institutions. So there's UWI, there's the Valsain Teachers College, there's Cipriani Labour College not far away. There are a lot of private institutions in that general area. And so you develop a synergy, and economic activity develops around that. And so if we look at the DB campus, then that's how we should begin to look at it. Not that we should say it must be this faculty or that faculty, but let us see what the opportunities are to expand our offerings in such a way that we attract foreign students, because our universities are struggling for funding. Governments are finding it difficult to meet their existing financial obligations to the universities. And so one of the ways to do it, because we don't have a local class of business people who see the giving of endowments like that happens in the United States to the university, that creates a significant source of private funding. So one of the ways in which our universities can earn money is by having more foreign students come in, because they will then be paying fees, they're full fee paying students, and that brings in foreign exchange as well, and helps to provide a income stream for our institutions. So it's really an opportunity that we need to seize and move quickly on, because these windows tend to close quite quickly.
Like regionally or internationally?
I think internationally as well. I think well, first of all, we could retain more of our Caribbean students at home. Mm-hmm. Yes, so that is one. And then secondly, there'll be students who might come out of, say, West African or Southern African countries, okay, East African countries, who, of course, because they speak, particularly English speakers, would see the opportunity of studying here in the Caribbean as being important. I think there are European students who would be interested in coming, even if it's like a semester. You know, there's universities do provide this reciprocal arrangements where our students could go somewhere for a semester and their students come. So even if it's a semester, so you're in a European university and you're studying, you know, the economy of industrial development in Europe. You can't do that without understanding sugar, plantation economy, and enslavement. Yes, because the two are intricately linked. That's right. And therefore you have to come here to see the papers of Lloyd Best and George Beckford and the others who have written about these matters. So you come down for a semester, and I know there are exchange programs. I know there are professors who have brought students down from Hamilton College and Colgate College in the United States for a semester. So we need to expand those opportunities to a much greater extent. People involved in cultural studies would want to come here. People who want to look at the experience of the Indian diaspora and what indentureship meant in Guyana or Trinidad and Tobago and Suriname.
Yes, even wildlife, because we have a significant wildlife experience here in Trinidad. I could see students maybe studying veterinary sciences coming down here to learn more about the fauna. Yeah, the fauna that we have here in Trinidad and Tobago. But I would imagine putting programs like these into place, the government would have to work very, very closely with local institutions. They would have to partner with them to create some sort of attractive package when it comes to exchange programs, a study semester abroad, so we can be known for that.
So I was thinking, literally just on that, how there's this new ministry now specific to tertiary education, right? If I'm correct, the Ministry of Tertiary Education and Skills Training, I believe. So that ministry, I think now, should take a frontal stance on this whole issue, and just as Jada said, create some sort of attractive package that will, you know, be appealing to international students to want to come here and study. And I was going to ask, you know, do you think that this ministry should, because I don't think they have said, I haven't seen anything about them saying anything on this matter. And it's very, I think right now especially, it's very important for them to comment on it or say something, because we want to keep our Caribbean students here.
So on that, Mr. Abdullah, the question I want to ask is, do you think that there's a political will there? Yes, they have the ministry, but do you think they actually put in the action there, or would?
Well, let's see. I mean, it's early days yet, so let us see. And that is why, you know, people like myself try to offer suggestions on policies to try and get some traction at a national level. So let us see what the response is by the Minister of Tertiary Education. He is someone who worked all of his life professionally and academically. He was at University of the West Indies and then at UTT. So he's very familiar with tertiary education and therefore ought to be able to move in this direction very quickly. And we're talking about various, I mean, you raised issues, for example, about our flora and fauna. So there's a whole range of scientific research that can be supported. Our maritime resources also is an area for people to do research in. And also sports. Ato Bolon made the point that a lot of our young people seek to scholarships and to go to the university in the United States because they are good in track and field, and they can better their performances because of coaching and so on at universities in the United States, and that certainly is true. But it then means that we should be opening up our programs of track and field at university levels. Jehu Gordon, for example, who won World Athletics gold medal, he did not study in the United States, as far as I'm aware. He studied at St. Augustine and trained here. So it is possible. And in Jamaica, Jamaican athletes, you know, train in Jamaica. Many of them go abroad, but a lot of them train in Jamaica, the top ones, including Usain Bolt. He never went to the United States to train. He trained in Jamaica. And Juliette Alfred, the St. Lucian, she left St. Lucia as a teenager to go to secondary school in Jamaica in order to benefit from the athletics programs in schools and that kind of thing. So we also can look at programs of excellence for beginning at school level, where we create centers of excellence. Here in Trinidad and Tobago, for example, we have, I think, the best facilities in the Caribbean with respect to swimming with the aquatic center, cycling with the velodrome. So there are things that we can do to develop centers of excellence. Jamaica's track and field, where even within the Caribbean, students move to go to particular schools, secondary schools, to benefit from their quality of training and continue into university. And we develop the best track coaches and the best football and cricket coaches and cycling and so on and so on, and swimming coaches internally. And then people will come from abroad to also study and work and train in our facilities here. So it's across the board that we can seize the opportunity and use our tremendous assets to develop.
But then on that, I don't you think that if we want to increase or better our or develop our sporting side of the
sporting industry
this year for students, then the problem is not so much the talent, because we have the talent, we have the ability of students to further their academics in the sporting sector, but really and truly, why they leave is because we don't have the proper resources and the persons to train them.
I feel that has been a debate for the longest while now. We don't have that investment into the sporting sector.
So then we have to look at how do we better that side of that, or that aspect of the sporting sector, so that students feel comfortable, or athletes feel comfortable to stay here or stay in the Caribbean to further their athletic career through education.
So you're right. I think one of the key weaknesses is coaching, that we do not necessarily have elite or coaches that can take elite athletes to the top of their game. And so in the short term, you may have to bring in coaches to support that program, and simultaneously you're building up the capacity of our coaches to get them up to elite level. And so that can be done. I mean, we have had examples of Anil Roberts, for example. He's not necessarily my favorite political person, but Anil, as a swimming coach, was successful. He took George Bovell to the Olympics and did very well. So, and Anil was a homegrown coach. So we do have that. I mentioned J.U. Gordon, who was coached here in Trinidad and Tobago by a local coach. So there are examples that we could draw on in terms of excellence, and we just have to see that now as something that is important to be developed. See, once you say this is something to be important to be developed, you then work to achieving it. If we say, no, it's all right, all of our students will go abroad to become good track athletes, then there's no incentive to developing a program here. But if we work and say, this is an objective and these are the benefits of it, then we will do that. And it may be that we will say that, given where we are, that Trinidad and Tobago is not the place where, or St. Augustine, where you want to develop your track athletes. We may say Jamaica is the place to go. So our best athletes will go to Jamaica, yes, to further their education and to develop as first-class track athletes, because they have a better athletics program than we do. But we may say, okay, Trinidad and Tobago is where you must go for swimming or for cycling, as the case will be, because we have the better facilities for that. So this is where now, as a regional institution, University of West Indies can play a role, supported by the national institutions like UTT and others.
I kind of wanted to delve into the social aspect of students who, they're hearing all of this, they're listening to us discussing the importance of building up our homegrown education system, but they're like, I've always wanted to go to the US to study, I want to study at this school, UPenn, this, that, and the third. I don't want to go to UE. Can you speak to why that mentality is put in place? Why do they think, oh, it's always better for me to go somewhere else, even though my home country has a good program?
Yeah. Okay, so as I said, at one point in time, the range of course offerings by UE was somewhat limited. So when I went to St. Augustine long time ago, right, in the early 70s, UE did not offer any studies in criminology, just to take an example. But they have that now.
Yeah.
So years ago, if somebody wanted to study criminology, you had to go to the United States, to Monroe College, which is well known, or John Jay College, which is well known for studies in criminology in New York. So that may have happened, but over time, the course offerings have been expanded, and therefore you don't necessarily need to go abroad. Now, the other thing is that there are the ideas in our heads that somehow or the other foreign is better.
Yeah.
And this is an old colonial mindset that has come down over the years, yes, that foreign is better. So we need to shake that out of our heads. As Bob Marley sang, we have to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. And therefore recognize that excellence does exist within ourselves. And we have offered to the world more people in the Caribbean per head of population than anywhere else as Nobel Prize winners. St. Lucia has produced two. Well, Trinidad and Tobago tries to claim Derek Walcott as partly ours, but it's St. Lucia, right? But Arthur Lewis and Derek Walcott, St. Lucia with 100,000 people has produced two Nobel winners. We produced Lydia Naipaul. So, and there are many others that, could be in the running. We have produced tremendous writers and thinkers and intellectuals and political activists and
so why does the colonial
persons.
mindset still persist, do you think? We're in the 21st century, it's 2025. Why does it still persist?
I think there's a certain allure, there's a certain excitement. The social media and other media, living in a different society, which is fine. People want to have a different experience, so you want to live in a different country, experience what that quote-unquote first world living is all about, and so you do that. But on the other hand, you also have to deal with the realities of racism and discrimination, and deal with bitter winters and all of those things like that, which are alien to us. So there's a certain excitement. I mean, when I was 16, finishing my A-levels, I did A-levels at 16, I was thinking of going abroad to study as well. And I was in Jamaica at the time, and I was thinking of going abroad, and then that didn't work out. But I was very happy to come to St. Augustine and benefit from teaching by people like Lloyd Best and others, which was tremendous. It was tremendous. And I would not have gotten that type of understanding of Caribbean reality if I had gone to a university in North America.
Ms. Demdula, you have to laugh at this. I'm reading an article on, I think the Prime Minister was questioned on Gates' response, the government's response to expand Gates at this current time. And one of the ads that popped up was an Immigrate to Canada ad, and I just had to laugh. I just had to laugh at it. But yes, so the Prime Minister's response when asked about Trump's directive and whether the government would expand the government assistance for tuition expenses program, she said they are American, a sovereign nation, and all sovereign nations are entitled to put whatever restrictions they want or not want to, but we will look into it. And she continued she was continued further on. But see, my naive response to that would be, we always bring up certain issues to the government, and then they have a sort of, what's the word I'm looking for, passive-aggressive or sort of complacent response. We'll look into it, or we'll do this, or we'll do that. But where is the actual action? And I know you're saying we're just getting into it, they're in their honeymoon phase, but how long the honeymoon phase is going to do something? Tell us, we're going to take a stance on it where we say, well, the U.S. doesn't want Trinidad students coming to study there. Well, we would impose certain restrictions on them. And I know that it may be a bit unrealistic to say just that, but we want to hear some sort of action, and I don't feel like we get that What do you have to say about that?
I agree. And for example, in my press conference on Sunday last, this was one of the issues that I raised. But I also spoke about, strengthening the local economy and saving foreign exchange and earning foreign exchange by a buy local campaign. And I do think this is a moment nationally where we could engage in, let us focus on local, buy local. And of course, when I talk about buy local, I'm also talking about CARICOM, Caribbean, not narrowly Trinidad and Tobago. And I think this is what we have to focus on. And this is an opportunity in terms of tertiary education where it fits into the buy local, that local is good. There was one of the manufacturing companies has been advertising quite extensively in the newspapers with a pullout and so on because they celebrated 40 years. And I'll call the name Langston Roach Industries, that's producing a whole range of products. And they started off with, with nothing. You saw Mr. Langston Roach trying something in a garage, right? And now he's developed a range of products. I could speak about Sasha Cosmetics, the Minister of Trade. The Minister of Trade understands these things, Mr. Kema Mirage, because he started off, I think in his mother's kitchen or something like that, trying to develop cosmetics for women of color, and now has a global brand. So we do produce products and services that are first class and are excellent. And so we need to recognize that, to appreciate that. We need to promote it. The media needs to promote it, and other ways of promoting what we do. And it needs to get government support as policy. And I think a focus on buying local, people talk about lack of foreign exchange. So, staycations are great and are useful, and other things. And, let us also focus in this regard on education, tertiary education. And the universities now will also be forced to step up too. So they will have to say, okay, AI is something that is happening. Let us maybe partner with a university out of China, because China is perhaps the most advanced country in this regard. In fact, one of my MSJ people right now is in China, absorbing a lot about AI in China. So, yes. Yes, Brian Khan, I will certainly, when he comes back in, you certainly let him come and speak to you about that experience. So, so that is something we now need to focus on. I think the Secretary General of the Mahasabha made that point recently, that we need to have a focus program on AI. So the universities have to step up, but the private sector as well. One of the reasons why technological development has taken place in the so-called first world countries, I prefer to call it countries of the North, is because the private sector finances research, and then that research is commercialized by the private sector companies, and they profit off of that. So they invest and they make a profit. Our private sector companies do not invest in research and development. Instead of some of these companies boasting about $1 billion after tax profits, they should be putting some of that money into the research programs of the university. We have professors who have been working around local herbs. I remember, I'm trying to remember his name now. He'll come back to me. I'm seeing his face in front of me. He used to teach in the Faculty of Natural Sciences when I was a student, and got into the whole area of our local herbs as medicines and other things like that. And then you have now Professor Yuri Clement, who is doing a similar work at the university. But they don't get funding. They need to be funded because research takes money. And if we have that kind of funding, then we could be producing our own pharmaceuticals coming out of our own herbal remedies, which our ancestors and grandparents used to use quite successfully to treat all kinds of ailments. And that is the kind of thing that the private sector needs to be engaged in. Serious research funded by the private sector, which they will then also benefit from in terms of going forward. We should, and during COVID, during COVID in the Roadmap for Recovery, that's 5 years now, right? MSJ's Roadmap for Recovery, which we produced very early on in COVID, I think in beginning of May of 2020. COVID started in March of 2020. And in our Roadmap for Recovery, we said, let us develop a local pharmaceutical industry, working with Cuba, that has the most advanced in the Caribbean, biotechnology and pharmaceutical sector. Let us work with them and develop our pharmaceutical sector, because we have students doing natural sciences, but what are they then going to do after their first degree? They end up teaching biology and physics and chemistry in secondary school, which is necessary. But some of them should become research scientists. They should do postgraduate studies and become research scientists. We don't produce enough research scientists. But if our research scientists are working in the United States and Canada and so on, right? And we don't benefit from that directly. But if we had a pharmaceutical industry, then we would create research scientists. Our food processing sector, we need to have more research scientists. There was a story in the newspaper about Dr. Cheryl Bowles of Shamir, and she was a top research scientist with Nestle. She developed a lot of their products, and then she left to set up her own business in cosmetics and so on, and has done very well. So there are opportunities like that, but it shouldn't just be left to one individual like a Kema Mirage or Langston Roach or Cheryl Bowles to do that on their own. We need to have universities supported by
the private
business.
Sector, supported by the government as well. So it's almost like a group project. Then
I have
right.
a little comment. Well, to make based on that, I don't think as much as I agree with what you're saying, that our private sector needs to step up when it comes to, keeping things local and us supporting our local economy as well. But when you think about it, our private sector, when we do anything local, we tend to hike up prices, and the local people, we don't, a lot of the time we can't afford local prices. So when we shop online or we shop international, we get better prices for this probably the same or similar product. Because if you look at our local fashion, right, we have a lot of very talented local designers. But when you go and you shop and you look at the things that they're selling, the prices are insanely high.
Do you think it's possibly because they buy materials from abroad, so they have to hike up the price where that is concerned, so that we, the consumer, get
it's a matter of scale. It's a matter of scale.
Yeah.
So you're comparing Claudia Pigas and Mailing and Zad and Eastman and the Cloth and the others, right? Those are some of the names that come off the top of my head, right?
Yes.
Yes. You're comparing them with off-the-rack clothing that is being mass-produced somewhere.
Well, yeah, fashion.
Right. But what you really need to compare them with are the international designer brands, which brands you will not be able to afford at all, because those things are going for many hundreds of US dollars. So what we have to look at is comparing apples and apples. If you're looking, and part of the problem, is scale. So a large manufacturer that is producing a range of cosmetics, say, whatever you want to call it, and they're producing, hand lotion, just to call something. They're producing hundreds of thousands of bottles of hand lotion. They can produce that at a cost that is lower than someone who has a small cottage industry that is producing very nice hand lotion, but is only producing 200 bottles a month. Yes. So it is not a matter that our local producers are jacking up the price. It is a matter of scale. And one of the things that when we were in the Economic Development Advisory Board, we were beginning to think about, we didn't get into it, was how do you then move people from being micro enterprise producers to becoming small, medium, and then large, and becoming exporters. Because if they then are exporting, so if something is selling for a small bottle of hand lotion or something like that is selling for 120 TT, and you find that, or $100 TT, you find that to be expensive. But if that is now selling abroad and you divide that by 7, it will become competitive internationally.
So we do
and if they
have
export
to,
more, they could bring the price down. Yes, I know it's getting late.
We do have to wrap. I really appreciate you coming on. I want to continue the conversation, especially as we go into the economist type of side, because it sounds like it's heading in a great direction. But we do have to wrap.
Yes, I had more opinions on on this part of the conversation.
We got something on the books to come back and talk again, and we just like summarize and come back on. So thanks so much.
Yes, for sure, anytime.
Thanks so much, Mr. Abdullah, for joining us today and having this conversation with us.
Thank you for having me. Take care.
For sure. Yes, you too. And something I do want viewers to sort of consider is, do we as a society have the imagination to build something new, or are we always waiting for the next foreign handout? And I know you have something to say about that, Mr. Abdullah, but we will hear from you on another day. Thanks so much again. All right. All right, so we're just going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, you guys know that it is Wild Wednesday. So we have Mr. Mead in studio, and we're ready and raring to go, so stay with us.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience. Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Low energy? Heart concerns? Migraines slowing you down? It's time to take control of your health. Join Wellness Unlocked, the series that brings expert advice and real solutions for a healthier you. In our latest episode, learn how Jameson CoQ10 can help support heart health, boost energy, and even reduce migraines. Get the science, the stories, and the steps to power up your health with CoQ10. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and start your wellness journey today.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm not to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break a balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have 2. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the game.
not no.
Let's go to the last part.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward and our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God, so we cannot have a stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim, or the man who's being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
And it's smooth now, you don't need to register nothing, we can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulate the law and we exploiting the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Money is something we all deal with, but how many of us truly understand it? What if you could make better decisions with your money? Decisions that secure your future, protect your family, and bring you peace of mind. I'm Darren Jacobs, and I'm here to help you make sense of your dollars. Welcome to Dollars and Cents, the show that breaks down the financial world in ways that matter to you. No jargon, no confusion, just real conversations about money, your money. So join me every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on WESN for Dollars and Cents.
Good morning and welcome back. You all know what today is.
Today is
Wild
Wednesday!
All right, so as usual, we have Mr. Academy joining us on the program this morning and in studio. Thank you for being here.
Ladies. Good morning, good morning. Thank you very much. And good morning to our friends, followers, fans, and even foes out there on the WWW. Thank you for listening in because you still make it work for us. Thank you very much.
Yes. Your viewership gives us
numbers.
Numbers.
It's a numbers game now. It's a numbers game now. But fortunately, we're lucky. Besides the numbers game, we have quality. We can't ever turn our back on quality, especially with these two lovely young ladies here, putting it out and doing it there on AM Prime. So thank you all, as usual, for having me here.
Thank you for coming on. It's always a pleasure. So we have you in studio right now. Who else do we have in studio?
Well, it's not your favorite. In fact, it's probably your least favorite. But it's very, it behooves me to bring this young man on this morning because of situations that are occurring in our country right now. What's the date today?
The 4th of June.
4th of June. Right. Did you know that tomorrow is the 5th of June? Logically following the 4th. But the 5th of June is World Environment Day. One of the biggest days on the schedule, the international schedule for days. You have Turtle Day and Parrot Day, World Environment Day, where everybody sort of takes a pause and says, hey, without the environment, no us. Without the environment in a proper way, we're going to suffer. So we sort of take a pause and recognize World Environment Day. Though according to people like me, I'm an environmentalist. Every day is World Environment Day. But sometimes you need to stop and just say, hey, we honor you today, you're special today. It's like every day is about your wife.
Like your birthday.
Right, yeah. But you miss your wife's birthday and it's going to be hell day for you. So, we got to take that pause. So, but also we're now in the rainy season. Rainy season is here, hurricane season is here. And with that, all the climate adjustments we have to make are occurring. And some of us are not making the adjustments, and some of the animals are making adjustments. So now you're going to have more human-wildlife conflict. And part of our education is to ensure that both elements can survive in a harmonious manner. We want to mitigate the conflict and make everything smooth and nice so that everybody lives harmoniously. So I don't know if you saw the video. There's a video that was out last week. It went viral really quick. In no time at all, I saw thousands of views, and of course all these silly comments, some of them clever, some of them, oh gosh, the old recycled stuff, she come to see, look, my wife, my ex-wife, my wife, my mother-in-law, that sort of thing there. So this young lady went to her car one morning and saw, well, she's down Penal, a snake on the dashboard. So she looks down and sees the snake and literally freaks out. Literally freaks out. Sitting there on the dashboard right next by the numbers and so on.
She's me and I am here.
Yeah. And she is a lot of big hardback man out there will be the same way. All right. Cry and scream like a proverbial right. So she was doing that, and I guess that added the drama and the flair to the video why people shared it, and then she was tapping on the glass and freaking out a bit. But she reached out to Hunter Search and Rescue, and they reached out to us, as they do many times. A lot of cases, the situation is that we don't do enough video of the actual capture and re-release because many times it's a solo or the situation just doesn't lend itself for someone holding a camera and getting proper footage. But the key thing is that we get the job done. So fortunately we have volunteers in that area. So the small snake, they were very capable of handling it. So they went down and they removed the snake, and the young lady was quite grateful for that. The video was, well, we didn't share the video. The video was not of the best quality. But the viral video of us screaming and tapping on the glass with the snake and so on there, it just went out there. And Mr. Snake is here with us this morning. All right, and I'm his interpreter. Because people want to know why you went in the woman's car, why you sit on your dashboard, why you this, why you that, why. So they've always told me to be the voice for the voiceless. Mr. Snake here, who's a boa constrictor, is voiceless, so I'm going to be his voice. So I'm going to answer those questions here this morning, and Mr. Snake is going to come out and meet you, Jada. There's no need to freak out. I'm just letting you know from now. He's a tiny little guy, it's in the palm of my hand. This snake is actually probably less than 2 weeks old.
Wow. So his mom was close by?
Well, she would have just done her thing and gone away. The way the boa constrictor operates is that she would conceive after being wrapped up with a male. And the amazing thing with boa constrictors is that the males have two hemipenes, basically two penises. And the female has matching receptacles to accept the sperm. And when the eggs are fertilized, she would keep them within her abdomen. And they would develop there. And when they're at the stage where they can exist outside of her, she would basically give birth. But it's still really eggs, okay? And they would come out and they would have this little glob around them. The ones that are not fertilized come out as what we call slugs. It's the same like a chicken egg. Some of the eggs will hatch and some are duds that you would probably call gander eggs, and you can toss at people and it'll be really smelly. And so this guy would have come out not too long ago and just been around and just found the first happy, secure place to hide, which presented itself as this young lady's car. And then, of course, the need for some warmth and so on there. So he got up on the dashboard there, and you know, up there's always warm. You know, either the engine heat sort of coming through there or just from the sun through the glass. So he got himself up there and he was just chilling, literally.
Himself in the car?
But cars, especially older cars, are quite porous.
Okay.
Your firewall would have been compromised, your door seals up under your fender coming in and so on. Yeah, we know that. I've driven in my car and got my feet wet and wondering what the hell is going on. You know, I not in the new car scene, I have old vehicles. So it'll be a common thing for me. So yeah, we do get wet in the cars, and all sorts of things can get in and out of the cars. So this is our little boy here. This is a wild snake. Okay, so he's not friendly like George. But because he's a baby, I have no particular concern about his bite or anything. First, it's non-venomous. So if he bites me, if I notice that he bites me, it would just be probably a tiny little scratch somewhere. And like I said, if. But yeah, so this is a newborn, basically. This is what a newborn snake would really look like, be like. I'm just going to get him on the counter here. Okay, it's a little low for the camera, so I'm going to keep him up here, right? Newborn. This is the guy that you would have seen people in that girl's screaming car video, and he was wrapped right up there. So today is feeding day for him. We're going to get him a lovely mouse, and he is going to grab it. He's going to constrict it, because he's a boa constrictor. And literally constrict it, causing the blood pressure to build up and his arteries in the mouse to pop and then eventually die. And then he would open his jaws and consume that whole mouse. And that is why they're important in our ecosystem. Mouse, rats, other rodents, other pests, pigeons, other birds, sometimes the chickens, unfortunately sometimes when they're large enough and in certain situations, they can even get a kitten or a puppy. Okay, but that's for people who keep throwing them out in the bushes thinking they'll be fine. You're feeding these animals. So I have no problem when you're feeding these animals, but are you being fair to the dogs and the cats by doing that? So you all come back to the spay neuter. So this little guy, Jada, would you like to just give him a little touch in the back there? I know you're afraid of snakes, but we're going on a slow program working Jada in, where Jada is showing that she can do this. You've touched George before. This is much smaller. There you go. So you would have seen pink ones and darker ones. This is a sort of grayish one. But no matter what color they all have the characteristic red tail, hence the name red tail boa constrictor. So compared to the rest of its body, towards the tail, a beautiful red pattern there. And they would have spurs which are too tiny to show you, but I'm pretty confident that it's a male. So this is a little boy here who is, his name is now Pinal. Okay, again, after location or sometimes a rescuer. So this is Pinal, and he's just here to tell you that you're going to see much more of them around now. Lots and lots of female boa constrictors are literally putting down babies right now. So with the change in weather, with some water rising and it's been a little cooler sometimes at night, they're going to find themselves moving around a lot. And as babies, they don't really know the lay of the land, and they will get themselves into some little predicaments, conflicts in people's cars, in people's homes. There was one in someone's garden down in San Fernando last week and so on there. They were brave enough to hold it and relocate it. So it's not, this snake poses no danger. Okay, it is not a mapipi, it is a macawel. So you notice the difference? When we're scared, everything is the same, right? You will even see a black-white man when you're afraid, okay? Let us recognize what they are, who they are, and what their characteristics are. Non-venomous, not dangerous in any form or fashion. You know, I can put this snake in my mouth, it will not bite me. Okay, I will probably bite him, he will not bite me. It is not a problem. So he's warmed up a bit there because of my temperature, and I can now just sort of boil him up, and he will calm down. Okay, and they'll have our lady hostesses here will be in a much calmer frame of mind, so we can continue this interview this morning.
So how big is he going to get?
Well, he is a boy, so if he gets to 10 feet, 11 feet, he'll be a big boy. If it was female, it could get up to 14 feet with quite a girth. So right now we are in waiting mode. We have a massive female that we collected, more than 10 feet a while back up in the east. And we are totally convinced that no female would have literally those hips unless she's ready to bear children. So she has some hips on her, she has some size, some girth. So each day we're just anticipating and looking and seeing, did she put down yet? And literally how much she could put down. Because we've never had a female that big. We've never had a boar that big. That's probably the largest boar that we've ever had. And with that girth, we are convinced that she's going to probably put down 50 babies. You know, she's literally a big
And would
girl.
you all let them go, or are you keeping them?
Well, we find out places like like Jada, where do you live?
Mova.
Right, so we'll take some to Mova.
Please don't.
No, we find nice areas all around the country, forested areas, where we can literally separate them from people. Because we care about the animals and we care about the people. So we put them in areas and places where they can thrive and do their thing and live and continue our amazing boa constrictor species here in Trinidad. And as we are that, it is actually, they are probably the staple of snake holders around the world. People who keep snakes almost always have one of these as one of their collection. Their colors, their variations, their behavior. It's an amazing animal to keep for someone who is experienced and knows what they're doing.
Are you going to let Penal go?
Most likely Penal will find a nice little home, not in Penal, probably in Queen Anne Forest somewhere, and we hope that he lives and thrives, lives his life, you know. But he's just a beautiful boy, and we can do that too because we're expecting a lot more babies, a lot more babies to come in, especially if this girl puts down, we just, you know, we were supposed to do an ultrasound, we got a little messed up with our timing, but if she doesn't do it early next week, we may get that ultrasound done because it's a good visual in terms of helping to teach people, especially veterinary students, what to look for, what to expect, and you know, understand how these animals reproduce. That's really important going forward because we may unfortunately find ourselves in a position where we may have to reproduce them in order to keep them in our ecosystem. So while like, oh, the only good snake is a dead snake, absolutely nonsense. These guys serve a vital role in our ecosystem. And especially a message going out to Tobagonians, the Tobagonians, please, 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 please stop killing your snakes. You have no venomous snakes, no dangerous snakes on your island. But your farmers are suffering because your guti and the cockrico and other stuff like that, they're doing damage. Because you all did the first damage by removing a lot of these guys from the environment. They have a place. They have a role, an important function in your ecosystem. Please do not try to deprive yourselves and each other of the benefits of these animals by killing them.
What is he doing with his tongue?
His tongue? Well, very, very articulate tongue in terms of just movement, but in terms of its function in sensing molecules of taste and smell in the air. So he's basically, that's his sensor, his radar, figuring out what's going on around him. So they will do that constantly. When a snake stops doing that, really, you know, you have a snake that's not doing that, something is wrong. It's not, you know, something is wrong up there. But they always need to get information to know where to go, what to touch, what to lick. They're always doing that. The tongue is always coming out to determine what's going on around it. He doesn't have hands to feel. So that does everything. They smell the molecules. If you pass by here an hour ago, molecules of smell, your perfume, whatever you have on, just sort of linger in the air. We are not sensitive enough to be aware of that or figure it out, what it is. Like we smell, you're smelling something, but you know what it is. They can determine based on that tongue flick, just sensing what's here, what's there. Same as a dog with his nose sniffing. So their tongue is their nose, their hands, their everything, determining their space, their environment, and everything like that there. So it's good to recognize that what they do, and again, at this time of the year, more and more calls, more and more calls. I've done so far for the year probably 25 snake calls that I was able to go on. Other volunteers that we've had have probably done about 15 or 20 also. So a lot of snake calls every other day and so on like that. And the idea is that I don't want people to call down the phone, but people sometimes, you know, all you have to do is just leave it alone. That's all you need to do. Just leave it alone, they'll go about their way. If it's a tiny snake in your house, you have a broom and a scoop. Almost everybody has that now. You sweep it into the scoop, hold it there with the broom, the bristles, take it outside, release it. Or put it in a bucket, cover it, get someone else who is capable of to release it. There is no need to harm these animals. This animal probably hasn't, I'm confident, has not had a meal yet in life.
So what is one specific feature on the snake that we can, you know, when we see it, we know, okay, this is the boa constrictor. It's not dangerous. It's not venomous.
Mackerel, red-tailed boa constrictor. So you will see, and our red is quite subjective, put it that way. Yeah. So it's not going to be a bright red like our national flag, but compared to the rest of its body, it has a reddish color. Okay, so it ranges from pink, so bright oranges and so on, but you will see it from literally 1/5 of the body right down to the very tip of the tail, that reddish color. Now, given the body color a name, ascribing a name to it will be not a good idea because they range. It can be almost pink, sometimes also lightish colors. You know, it's like us humans here, you know, right here on stage we have 3 different colors of people right here behind this podium here. But we're all, you know, Trinis, we're all black people. So the head shape, don't go too much by that. Most of our snakes have a similar type head. Don't come with this diamond stuff. That stuff you see on the internet, okay? But the heavy body, for the size, they usually have a heavy body. It's one of the heavier body snakes in the world. Okay, boa constrictor gets heavy, constricts. It has that weight and that build, especially in its female, it gets thick.
Is that because of its muscles?
Very muscular, very powerful, and gets very large. Again, 14 feet. That's a pretty big snake. It's the 2nd largest snake we have in the country. And of course, you know which is the largest snake we have in the country, right, Jada? I'm doing Jada snake education. Jada, which is the largest snake in the world?
In the world?
In the world.
The big anaconda type?
The green anaconda. And the green anaconda is native to Trinidad and Tobago.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. We have a lot of is in it. We have a lot of is. The fastest snake, the green anaconda. You know what?
Is it rare?
Is it rare? Well, it's kind of rare. It's just exclusive to its habitats. It's not found in too many places. Because of the large and girth and the size of the body, it uses water. So it's like a whale. Whales are not necessarily rare, but you're not going to find them any and everywhere. There's certain bodies of water that you will find them in and certain depths and so on. So in water, they're quite agile. On land, they're slow because now they have more lumber and have to move this mass around. These guys are pretty quick. In fact, they believe that this has one of the fastest strikes of any snake in the world. They strike really fast, and we've, you know, benefited from seeing that many times. You know, when we fed them live, even when you feed them dead, frozen, and reheated, just strike. Once they lock in and say, "I'm going for that," it's quick. You blink and you miss it, and you get that. No, I was looking. You know, it's quick. But the anaconda, green anaconda, that's a Trini, true and true. So we are.
It's not venomous or
No,
dangerous?
it's a constrictor also.
Right.
It's a constrictor. So it will grab, it will constrict, and even use the water to help drown its prey.
Wow.
But they get massive. Although they claim there's a new one in South America now. Still right now, the green anaconda is the largest snake in the world, and it's a Trini.
Would we get the opportunity of meeting one?
Well, we do have quite a large specimen, and this is why I'm working Jada up to green anaconda. Okay? First, we did a snake via Zoom. Okay, so I think she was okay with that last week. You survived? Your heart was good? Heart rate normal? Good. So now we have a tiny newborn. You can't get more helpless than a newborn. And she actually touched it, and that's a good step. So we're going to work our way up, and hopefully soon we'll be able to bring the green anaconda. We'll have to do some adjustments in studio, though, because one, she is big.
So come this table,
she may just fit on this table.
The entire table.
Yeah, she may be about, I would say, probably 17 feet right now, probably.
And she'll get bigger than that.
And she will get bigger than that. They get up to 20-something feet easily because they have a nice long lifespan. They get 30, 40 years easily. Once they don't meet Trinis, they live.
So what about the boa constrictor?
In terms of lifespan, around that same age also. Yeah, most of them average out 20 to 30 years, but there have been records of ones about 40, 41, going on 41 years. So they can live, you know, with the right conditions and so on, and they do well. and they almost seem to always put on a little size as they get bigger. So if we get an old anaconda, she's going to be massive.
A part of me doesn't want to try and hold it, but at the same time, I'm like, is it not slimy, but the feeling?
It is. Imagine the nicest your skin is after you bathe and you lotion, especially like cocoa butter, and you'd have felt your skin and it's different from like before. That is the subtlety and the niceness.
How quickly does he move through?
It's quite slow. It's quite calm and easy right now. And you see, it's got accustomed to me already. So if you just put your hand below and just let it pass on your hand, and that is the toughest part of it, the below, because it has the largest scales. Now you pass your hand along the top of it. Give me more than one finger. Give me a couple of fingers and just, get a touch, a connection. There is no slime.
But there's a friction there when I go back and forth.
The wrong way, right? The scales, because the scales have to lay in one direction.
Yeah. He doesn't even look scaly.
They're so tiny, and they're so well interwoven that it creates that smooth finish. And that's the reason why when you stop by those fancy shoe stores and so on there, you look at the snakeskin stuff and you're like, wow. And that's why it carries also that big hefty price on it also. Okay? Because it's very, it's amazing, and yet it's sad with the what they're doing with the snakeskin trade now. Some snakes are being bred exclusively for it, but the problem is how they are inhumanely treated and so on. So it's quite questionable if it's ethical to continue that sort of thing. So, but we do have amazing reproductions and facsimiles, and the fake stuff is amazing. Amazing. Yeah.
What does it mean, fake?
Fake, for snakeskin and all that. Yeah. So it's so you get the beauty of it without having to harm any animals. And you can get it now in different textiles also. So you can get the breathable stuff, like this is breathable sort of sportswear. So I can have this in a whole snakeskin outfit there. And I'm like, oh my God, you're wearing snakeskin. No, it's actually, synthetic, but it just gives the look. I'm paying tribute to the snake. So we can do that now. That's the beauty of modern day technology. So again, folks, red-tailed boa constrictor, one of the many snakes who may be coming into your, slithering to a backyard near you, or a car, or anything like that. Don't harm them. Give us a call. Give the professionals a call. Give us a chance to rescue and relocate the animals without hurting them, without killing them. And that way, everybody benefits. Those rats that spread leptospirosis that kill many people each year, that's a silent killer. Okay, people go into hospital and die from leptospirosis, and you don't hear about it unless it's a big case. I think back in 2010, there were, 9 or 10 people at one time down south who came down with leptospirosis, and a few died. So then that was a big, crisis. But individually, weekly, monthly, when people die, you don't really hear about it. Sometimes it's not even diagnosed, is what we've been told sometimes. But those are the killers. These are your saviors, okay? And I'm sorry if your name is Eve, he will leave you alone, okay? You don't have to mess with that apple, all right? So we're just going to put Mr. Penal back there now.
Can I hold him before you put him back?
I was waiting for that opportunity. There we go. You just, 2 hands. What you try to do, you don't ever close your hands. Just keep giving him space to go. So he is not confined. He doesn't feel like you're retarding him and his development and movement. He wants to go, and he's getting to go. And it's as easy as that, all right? So next time we want to see Jada doing this. Okay,
I think
Jada?
I can do it. It's just
We're going to build to it.
Okay. He's not moving. He's not moving,
Yeah, he's just chilled out. That's how chilled he is. See, I kept my promise to you. We're going to build to it. We're not going to hurt him. We're not going to hurt you. We're going to respect your boundaries of fair, but try to encourage you. For you to grow in any role, you have to step onto the next level. Go beyond your comfort zone. You stay in that comfort zone, you're going to stay in mommy and daddy's house and drive their car, eat their food, and never. Look at you here now, a big girl on stage. Yeah. And why I like to call you a big girl? You told me just recently, really, I just realized how young you were, in 2010, just entering secondary school, and here you are presenting and hosting. So that's a big step.
Thank you.
Okay, if I told you that when you were 11, 12, you would have freaked out. But here you are. And that's how growth is. That's how humans are. At one point it was this, and another stage in our development, we learn, we understand, we move on. And that's important, the growth, understanding, and moving on. But sometimes it's uncomfortable. But we have to deal with that. That's the only way we grow. The only way we grow. So very proud of you ladies here. And, I'm hoping some of you folks out there can understand. I'm not in any way encouraging or espousing, go out and hold a snake and hug a snake and kiss a snake. No. Leave it for the professionals.
It's
Today,
it's either he's really comfortable or he's not comfortable at all.
very comfortable. If he's not comfortable, they start moving like crazy. So he's comfortable. Okay.
He's not
Your
even.
hands are soft. Your hands are probably cooler than mine and different.
Yeah,
so
my
he's
hands
just
are
like,
warm.
right? So it's, he's just chilled. And that's what you want, an animal to be chilled. It's not
But
stressed
he's
out in
not
any way.
even sticking his tongue out or anything.
Right? Not difficult. He's like, okay, no, I'll go then. Okay, you want me to move? I'll move.
This reminds me of the just hanging in there meme. Because it's really and truly just hanging in there.
Yeah. And he's cool with that. The last few rescues we've had, besides car and van, have been up trees. So they do get up trees. They're just very, very talented in moving around.
His eyes are very small.
Yes. And if you notice something, the eyes carry the camouflage pattern on his body, so they do not stand out. And that helps him with his ambush capabilities. Stealth. Yeah. Stealth moves. Yeah, he goes into stealth mode and he'll just wait there for a mouse to come along and then bam, gets it. So I'm excited about this weekend, ladies. You know why?
Yes.
You know why? This weekend is our international course.
Yes.
Again, in keeping with our celebrations this year for our 20th anniversary, doing wildlife conservation, education, rehabilitation, and releases. So our instructor is coming in from Florida on Friday, and we'll be doing our course on Saturday and Sunday at the Winston Nanan Carney Bird Sanctuary at the boarding hub there as you enter the sanctuary. Registrations are just about closed now, but today and today only, if anybody last minute missed out, failed with their credit card, they can contact me directly and we'll try to get you in. And you have to start your homework from tonight.
So let's reiterate the phone number.
The phone number is 366-4369.
369.
That's it, 366-4369. Give me a call, let me know, hey, I missed out, I want to get in. You just have a couple days, but today is the last day that I will be able to try and extend backup registration to get you into that class. Because I know there are a couple of people who were trying and they had issues with their credit cards and they had to wait till the end of the month, which was just a couple of days ago, to get something cleared off. So it's your last chance today to get in on that course. It's great, the labs are great. Hands-on on Sunday, and then, well, of course, the exam on Sunday.
Yeah.
You must pass that exam because this is an international certification that says you have reached basic competency in wildlife rehabilitation. You're okay, not do you anything. Let it go. If it wants to go up your arm, just relax. Just relax. Has anything happened thus far?
No.
No, and nothing will.
No, but my hand started to get tingly when he started crawling the other direction.
No, that was from your heart. It wanted to stop. But it's all right. It'll do nothing. He didn't bite you thus far, and he won't bite you.
I think he's just staying. He's not moving, so it's making me nervous. There he goes. There he goes.
Right? So, folks, this weekend, our basic wildlife done by the International Wildlife Rehabilitation Council, not Ricardo Mead, not the El Socorro Center for Wildlife Conservation, the International Wildlife Rehabilitation Council. That is the world governing body for wildlife rehabilitation. And that certificate, once you pass your exam, will say your name on it and that you have reached that basic level of competency. And then there are so many other advanced courses and so many opportunities for you to use this here in Trinidad, but the world over, whatever little animals they have, they're trying to hold on to it and preserve it and so on there. And that is just amazing. What is more amazing is that we are not doing enough here to preserve and hold on to what we have. You know the main reason for that? We have too much. Other countries have one or two animals that are iconic and symbolic and they're holding on to that. We have so many amazing things here. Look how many animals I've brought on the show here. So now, after a while, it's like been there, done that, seen that. Bats, we have 70. Birds, we have 500. So much. But that is our next boom. And people need to understand that. But you can't sell what you don't know. You can't sell what you don't have. Right? And part of the experience for ecotourists is the knowledge and the capability of the people around them. So we're trying to grow that capacity in a big way. And before the end of this year, we will be announcing some great plans with a lot of organizations moving forward. You good? Moving forward so that the boom can happen. And the boom must happen on the low levels also, not just like a big corporation, on a low level. The doubles man must be, the vendors, the taxi people, the people making uniforms, the people selling sugar cake, all these people benefit. If you can survive and sustain your family, you're in a good place going forward. Okay? And that's what we want people. And those people who are in a good place going forward are the people who are going to say, hey, imagine people come to Trinidad to see this snake in the wild. You could believe that? Right? So look where we are with turtles now. Years ago, I remember 30 years ago, people poaching and killing turtles, going on the beach, and it was just an awful stench because the bodies were left there as they cut off the flippers and the turtles rotted away on the beach.
Wow.
Now every turtle matters. Turtle lives matter. Animal lives matter because human lives matter. And we are intertwined. You can't have one without the other. And the more people understand that, is the more they respect. I don't care if you don't like snakes, it doesn't matter. But you need, as a taxi driver, before you run over that snake, understand that your next $100+ US person stepping in your taxi and hiring you for the day might be someone who wants to see the snakes, the same snake you want to run over on the North Coast Road right now. It comes back. And they do that without asking you anything. All they want is quite simply for you to leave them alone. All they want is to live their life the same way you want to live your life. That's actually lovely. He's just posing right there. I think he wants to eat Jada, but...
Yeah, he's just facing me.
Yeah, she's too big. Or he's probably admiring you. But it's there. Okay, so we have so much going on in this country. We are lucky. Time will come when our finite resources will wear themselves down, and we have to find other ways of bringing in that income. It is here now, but we just have to reach and teach people. So once again, and always, thank you, ladies, for having me on. I will go through hell and high water to be here one way or the other, because especially this year, 20th anniversary for the center, is a great milestone and a great chance to reach and teach more people about our biodiversity and its importance for our survival. It's not about theirs, it's ours.
Yes.
We are the ones who will suffer in the end. So we have to make every effort to make sure that it's better for our children and our children's children.
So do you have a quote for us?
A quote? Oh, I didn't even think about that.
A quote for us, Mr. Mead.
Man, I was just having so much fun watching fun videos and stuff like that there. I didn't even think about a quote. But always, one that works is one that my mother drilled into me. Then I got into Scouts, and every organization, it seems like there's always someone who comes and gives you the same quote and speaks to you. Samid, we expect this from you. To whom much is given, much is expected. And we're fortunate in Trinidad and Tobago, we were given a lot. So you know what? We have to do a lot with what we are given. We are going to be pioneers for the Caribbean, for the region, for the world, in wildlife rehabilitation, wildlife conservation, and total prosperity in a natural and holistic way.
Do we have the most variation of these wildlife creatures and...
You mean the diversity?
Yes.
Well,
in the Caribbean.
Oh, yes, in the Caribbean, by far. But the Caribbean peels, the rest of the Caribbean, everything else in the Caribbean put together cannot match what we have here in Trinidad.
Okay, wow.
Okay? We have just so much. And again, it's because of our geographic proximity and where we started off. We're South American. Okay? So people tell you Bahamas, they have probably 2 snakes. Jamaica, 3. They wouldn't see this, that. The only time they see some other animals when it's invasive. We just have so much numbers, it's mind-boggling. It's hard for me to even keep up with species sometimes, but it's out there and it's amazing. And I'm hoping to, bats is something that people are sort of persecute also. I'll probably get a bat next time. It doesn't have to be live, but I'm going to talk to Trini Bats, an organization, a great organization that has done a lot of work identifying bats, and they're still identifying bats. I believe we have the largest carnivorous bat in the world right here in Trinidad.
By carnivorous, it eat bugs?
By carnivorous, that means it eats rats. If it was
big.
If it was insectivorous, it would eat bugs. Lots of our bats are insectivorous. That's why they sort of zoom and dive at you and you have your headlights on, because there are bugs there and they grab them. They eat tons of mosquitoes and bugs. It's a big one. It's a big one. I think it's called the spectral bat. But I'll do some more research, and probably if we can get some nice pictures or even a specimen of it there. We just have so much here. If you find me getting all glossy-eyed and wide-eyed when I talk about it, it's just because there is so much and so much that I have to learn learn, and so much that I would love to share with our viewers out there. 70 species of bats. And that's not a bird that people remember, that's a mammal, a flying mammal, the only true flying mammal in the world. And when you start getting into bats and hearing things about them, it's just mind-blown.
Wow.
They have flexible bones, people. And somebody like me can appreciate that. When I get out of the car, I go, ouch, and then go crack and creak and cluck, right? And I'm thinking, is this suspension? No, it's me. It's my suspension making those noises, because my bones and human bones are not flexible, and we get harder and more brittle as we get older. But the bats, their bones actually bend. What makes their bones bend? Imagine if our bodies were that subtle. Then you would remain young forever. At least not have the pains, you know?
Yeah,
so
wow.
it's just so much amazing things right here in our country.
So I think that's a beautiful way to end. Thanks so much, Mr. Mead, and thank you, Pinal. And then go to close.
All right, guys. So that was Mr. Mead on
Wild
Wednesday.
On AM Prime. Sorry, guys, we're a bit long. We're paying attention to the snake right here because Pinal, he's very quiet and he doesn't move a lot, but he's also.
I like the fact that he's so comfortable.
Yeah, especially because it's so cold in the studio, so you would expect him to not be as comfortable as he is.
All right, guys, so y'all know y'all can leave your comments.
Engage with us on WESNCC, WESN TV on Facebook, and the WhatsApp number 682-9376, 682-9376 if you ever want to get in touch with us or give us topics for discussions, anything you want to hear. You know, we listen to you guys as much as possible. So thanks so much for tuning in on AM Prime on WESN today. Stay tuned for Talking Points with Sean Michael Small coming up on the hour.
Yeah, guys, so stay safe, stay inspired, stay informed. We'll see you back here again tomorrow morning.
Yeah, bye-bye.
WESN.
Low energy? Heart concerns? Migraines slowing you down? It's time to take control of your health. Join Wellness Unlocked, the series that brings expert advice and real solutions for a healthier you. In our latest episode, learn how Jameson CoQ10 can help support heart health, boost energy, and even reduce migraines. Get the science, the stories, and the steps to power up your health with CoQ10. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and start your wellness journey today.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title, it's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
Feeling drained? Struggling to keep up? It's time to take control of your wellness. On this episode of Wellness Unlocked, we're diving into the key nutrients your body needs for all-day energy and balance. With 100% or more of your daily essential vitamins, plus added chromium to support healthy blood sugar, this is complete wellness in a single soft gel. Join us as we uncover how small changes can make a big impact on your health. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and take the first step toward better health.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Nah, you don't need to register nothing. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity, from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
let's go to the last part.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
WESN.
Here is your WESN News on the Hour. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. The ministry recalls PBR permits in system overhaul. Lighting company suffers $60,000 loss in festival vandalism. Minister TSTT clash over contract concerns. And internationally, Trump says no uranium enrichment under any Iran deal. Now for the details. The Ministry of Transport and Civil Aviation is recalling all PBR letter permits numbered 0001 to 0645. These permits will be invalid from July 1st as part of a move to improve transparency and efficiency. Applicants must now submit a new application with updated documentation. The ministry thanked permit holders for their cooperation during the process. Over $60,000 in lighting equipment was destroyed at the One Caribbean Music Festival after an angry patron stormed the stage at the Queen's Park Savannah. Director of Lullaby Group Sheldon Stephen said the woman damaged high-powered lighting gear during a 20-minute outburst. He criticized the low police presence and urged the public not to blame service providers for event disappointments. Public Utilities Minister Barry Padarath is denying claims of a staff purge at TSTT, saying short-term contracts are expiring as scheduled. However, TSTT says no contracts are currently up for renewal or termination. The CWU is accusing the company of abusing contract labor and bringing back retrenched workers as consultants. A new board is expected to address employment issues soon. U.S. President Donald Trump says Iran will not be allowed to enrich uranium under any future nuclear agreement. This follows reports that the U.S. proposal allows limited enrichment, which Tehran insists is for peaceful energy use. Meanwhile, the IAEA is calling for more transparency from Iran after findings showed an increase in near-weapons-grade uranium. Iran maintains it will continue enrichment with or without a deal. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi Macnish. Thanks for watching.
WESN.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
WESN.
It's interesting when the opposition gives you more to chew on than the sitting government on policy decisions and technical proposals, but I guess there's a first time for everything. Now, not that I agree with everything being said, but there's good and bad, in part because, to some extent, what's being discussed is potentially premature. First thing would be the stand your ground legislation. The opposition is seeking more consultations on the potential framework because even I was wary of the Florida model because stand your ground in Florida is not just to protect from home invasion. Stand your ground could be, I'm in your home and I could stand my ground depending on a whole host of various circumstances, right? Obviously, if I'm trespassing, it technically shouldn't count unless there's some technical argument for my defense to say that I'm not trespassing. And then, again, there are other hurdles, but... Now, one of the things that the opposition leader brought up is that stand your ground laws increase, or at least potentially the Florida model, increases homicides and firearm homicides, right? Now, it is not necessarily directly proven to say that it is a statement of fact, but there is supportive evidence, at least one paper found, looking at various studies, not just a single study,
that there's supportive evidence that stand your ground laws may increase firearm homicides and homicides. And that's a fair statement to say that it absolutely does. To what extent do these studies and statistics account for other factors? Because at the end of the day, we are TNT and Florida is Florida and the United States is United States. Culturally, we're different. How we approach firearm ownership, how we approach self-defense, to some extent is different. There are certain places in the States, more than in TNT, where to some extent you kind of know not to start any personal nonsense, because if it goes too far, the people residing in that community is more than happy to defend themselves at lethal force. And there are a few private homeowners here in TNT that have the training and have the determination to take it that far if certain things happen, but to what extent do we have that culturally? Or maybe, because there's a difference when you have a responsible, deterministic approach to that sort of thing, and you have the "I's a big man and you can't be talking to me like that" approach to how you're going to do things. But ultimately, it's still premature. We know that they said the Florida model doesn't mean they're going to use the whole aspect of Florida's stand your ground laws. Although I would argue then it would have behooved the government to be a bit more detailed in any disclaimers to tell us, look, we're looking at this model. This is what we're potentially looking at now. I don't know if they didn't want to commit to not including certain controversial aspects of Florida's laws. And usually, prematurely committing yourself to a course of action is not a good idea. But to some extent, when a politician mentions Florida, the whole reason why you use that as an example is to say this is the possibility of what we're looking at. This is the effect we're hoping to have. In which case, if you take it that way, remember what I said, we just had an example of a stand your ground situation that, let's just say, was one of the worst case scenarios because it wasn't a home invasion or it wasn't an attack on someone's person. It wasn't arguably a crime being committed, in which case now, to what extent are we willing to have more situations like that at the very least occur as a side effect of pushing self-defense as a major component with regards to crime fighting? And the best part is the current, though limited, TTPS achievements with regards to seeing such a low murder rate. For me, anything under 30, I would argue, is a good sign. That's when I could actually stand up and be like, oh, we're below average. It's not often that we have less than 30 murders a month. And if that could be sustained without stand your ground legislation, then it begs the question, what's the point of stand your ground legislation? Now, a couple other things, and what I find where the opposition might be in danger of going too simplistic. They're simplifying the situation. Is it to communicate to the public, or is it because of an inability to communicate complex issues within a limited media window? Is it the reporting? I'm not entirely sure, but this demerit point situation, debate, is continuing, and I find it is honestly ridiculous on how it's being debated, because as I pointed out, outside of the San Fernando Taxi Association, who said we're all for the demerit points for reckless driving, but there's some understanding that it was excessive for lesser traffic violations. And now the opposition is saying don't scrap it, but they're not, as far as I'm seeing, because even Marvin Gonzalez is saying some people regard it as punitive, but it's a simple system that tracks the behavior of drivers on the road. That looks to me as though, to some extent, they want to look at the population as a one-size-fits-all and are not actually hearing some of the stories of citizens who are not endangering anybody's life, but are extremely, one, inconvenienced, and two, I guess you could say, harshly punished because of the money that they have to put out, plus whatever they have to do to rectify these demerit point situation for simple traffic violations. And my issue is, everyone that says keep the demerit point system, technically, there's an indirect implication that the government is too one-dimensional in its approach. Keep or scrap, because they're just scrapping it wholesale, right? So if you want to make that argument, fine, but that's not what the argument for the proponents of the demerit point system are making, from NGOs to former government ministers who are now in opposition. And I am very much besides myself wondering why can't we be a bit more detailed and accurate and constructive in what we're saying? Because they're not doing a very good job, the proponents of the demerit point system, in countering the claims made by the actual victims of a system that was not, dare I say, implemented properly or being run properly. One or the other, if not both. Why do you need demerit points for an illegal turn? Not an illegal turn that could have potentially caused an accident. An illegal turn because of traffic management flow issues. An illegal turn that the public, members of the public, were not necessarily even aware that it was an illegal turn. An illegal turn that members of the TTPS might not necessarily be aware that it's an illegal turn, much less members of the public, because of how it's expressed in the signage, whether on the road, on a sign, on a pole, what have you. The situation is not necessarily clear. All right, fine. Ignorance is no excuse for the law, but in that case, when a ticket suffice, ironically, it's Faris Al-Wari that kind of gives a little bit of moderation on this situation, because he's saying the removal of demerit points isn't necessarily the removal of the sanction. There's still a sanction on the parent legislation. Now, if we want something punitive for reckless driving, that's fine. If reckless driving is your concern, maybe you should frame the arguments for all the proponents of the demerit point system on limiting it to that and anything else of that level that warrants such a punitive punishment, consequence. But they're not doing that. They're trying to do a one-size-fits-all. Not all traffic violations are the same. And that's where you're going to lose the debate, because there are too many people in the public that want the demerit point system gone for a separate issue than reckless driving. That's point number one. Point number two, it doesn't matter what the consequence is if there are too many people in the public who don't have to suffer it, because the enforcement of the consequence is not good enough. Now, there's a correlation apparently. First of all, Marvin Gonzalez was saying that they had some people driving around with over 200 demerit points on their records. Would they not have their license suspended at that point? So something tells me that that is proof that the demerit point system was not working. Because I think at that point they weren't supposed to be driving on your road. But apparently you could get away with it because, again, enforcement issues. But then there's also the fact that there's a correlation between the demerit point system and a reduction in road fatalities. Is there? To some extent, yes, you could see a correlation, but what proves that it's causation? That the demerit point system had a direct effect on road fatalities? I don't know. I do know that for the most part, whenever I am on the highway at night, I see generally the same amount of speeding that I saw before. The same amount of reckless driving. So, I don't know. But I'll leave that there. Let's go straight into today's daily review. All right. It is now a thing. It is now an official thing with regards to the whole controversy that caused most of the foreign performing slate at the One Caribbean Music Festival to drop out. And it has led to certain stakeholders basically call for various actions. First of all, of course, the Minister of Finance, he is looking at a fact-finding mission, which I actually appreciate the term used. There is no allegation of wrongdoing. There is no implied anything for the court of public opinion to chew on. The public probably has questions. Where did all this US come from to pay this guy? And that doesn't include the other foreign performers, by the way. We don't know to what extent the total bill just for the performers was. But the minister is saying, let's go on a fact-finding mission to kind of see what's there. And I have no issue with this whatsoever. Because at a time when the distribution and of foreign exchange is somewhat of a controversial issue, and it is perceived by the public to have haves and have-nots, all right, officially, look into it, and let's see what there is. But it actually went a step further, and the Acting Commissioner of Police, Junior Benjamin, has confirmed in one news report that the Financial Investigations Branch of the TTPS is probing the source, method, and timing of the $950,000 in US payment made to Vibes Cartel by One Caribbean Music. So this is interesting in that the TTPS has apparently not received any formal report on the matter. They are proceeding with their own investigation. They could do that? So they're going to look into the matter. The FIB is going to look into the matter. I could see why. I don't want to say why because it's purely speculative and it might be controversial. But I could see why, on top of just the fact that that's a lot of US. And I guess there are questions with regards to how did you get that US? But there's more to this now. This has led to a couple of things. First of all, some promoters are questioning with regards to the amount of money being paid to these foreign acts. What about our local acts? So Randy Glasgow was first quoted in the report where it's absurd to pay an overseas act $9 million, I believe that's the TT translation, and then haggle with our own artists over a few thousand. We have talent that drives carnival and brings global attention to Trinidad. Why shouldn't they be paid accordingly? Local stars must be respected, and that means meeting their asking prices. Now, he did say, imagine Marshall Montano, Kestaban, Bungie Garland, Nadia Batson, Ravi B all being told to lower their fees while foreign acts get a blank check. I don't know if it's a blank check, but I guess he's using that term for dramatic effect, basically saying while foreign acts could demand a lot more than our local acts. Now, here's the thing. I don't think when you are looking to hire Marshall Montano or Kes, you are haggling over $1,000. Because as far as I'm aware, their fee at times could be in the six figures. So we ain't talking about the real small money jobs with people like that, like Bungie, like Nadia Batson. Well, I mean, not everybody is on the same level as Marshall, Kes, and maybe Bungie. Right? But still, Nadia Batson, Ravi B, I'm pretty sure they ain't going to be cheap, though. You ain't going to get them for like $3,000 or a couple hundred. Right? And I guess now the question is the divide in how the market value of various performers. Because our music industry, really and truly, the commercial aspect, there are a few acts like Marshall that is commercially very viable and very popular and can pull a crowd, draw a lot of customers and ticket sales. And then there are others who are new or not that good or average. And the average level is not at an international level. And now the question is, do we perceive Jamaican artists at a higher level internationally than local artists? Maybe. I mean, to be fair to Jamaican artists, reggae and dancehall, they do a lot better of a job, it seems, with regards to promoting their music and growing their industry outside of their country and outside of the region. I mean, how many soca artists go to Jamaica to perform? I don't know. Something tells me the demand is not necessarily the same, but I could be wrong about that. But then Jerome Priscilla counters with what basically came to mind, but while I just had the thought forming in my head, the report, as I read the report, he put it in a good way. I don't know, this is a quote, I don't know any local artist who can pull a crowd like Vibes Cartel. You just have to be real with yourself as an artist, because a promoter is a businessman or businesswoman. They'll pay you based on the size of the crowd you could pull. This is Rome. Right? Basically, artists need to be honest with themselves about their market value. And part of it is Jamaican artists don't perform here all the time. So there's going to be a bit of premium just because they're foreign artists, just because they're outsiders, just because they have to travel, just because it's rarer. And it might seem unfair, but to some extent, that is a basic factor in any kind of market. It doesn't always mean that it's better, just that it's not as available. And that's part of economics and business 101. Because at the end of the day, the crowd upset. They didn't pay money for a fete with a DJ. They didn't pay money to then have to pay for food, or if it came free or whatever. They didn't pay money to see the people that showed up alone. They paid money primarily for these foreign acts. So assuming that the promoter did his due diligence and the amount of money, we're not considering foreign exchange availability here, just going with the actual monetary value, right? And we just assume that he could get the Forex. Hopefully, he looked at the amount of money he was making, potentially, and he used that to determine the amount of money it would cost to hire these foreign acts, and he was still going to make a profit. And I think, for the most part, that seemed to be the case. So, can you do that with local acts? Maybe, maybe not. I think we overestimate our local music industry while not supporting it enough. Meanwhile, last on this, Dr. Joanne Tull, she's academic coordinator and lecturer for the postgraduate programs in art and culture and enterprise management and carnival studies in University of the West Indies. She's reportedly supporting calls, or making the call, to regulate the entertainment industry through legislation. All I'll say to cut this short is this. I think that there might be some areas that needs to have legislation, some baseline things to ensure certain exploitative practices do not occur. Not that I'm saying they occur, but even if they don't occur now, doesn't mean they can't occur in the future, right? That's just the nature of it. You can't just assume that the ethics of an industry is going to always be maintained, because the people in the industry change. It doesn't even take a whole generation. Just 5 to 10 years, there'll be a new wave of people, and somebody will have the smart idea to try to game the system and take advantage of people, whether it's taking advantage of local acts, like what Randy Glasgow was saying, or taking advantage of customers, like what may happen if One Caribbean Music does not handle this thing, not intentionally, but the consequence, the effect might be similar to exploiting customers if they don't handle this properly. But I don't know to what extent we should be looking at legislation to be like the fix or the solution, because arguably, there's a lot of subjectivity with regards to these sort of things, and legislation is hard and fast rules, and at some point, it might be more burdensome than helpful. Margaret Wade from Africa, she's an entrepreneur from Africa, she has gone around talking one very simple premise that I believe might be more true than most people think. Africa is not corrupt because anything unique about Africa except that it's overregulated. And when something is overregulated, like TNT with ease of doing business, what's going to happen is you're not going to have corruption and, oh my gosh, all of this law breaking because people want to do evil. A lot of it is going to start because it has to just to get things done. Just to get normal business done, like getting a driver's license. You're going to have to technically do something that is not supposed to be legal. Let me put it that way. And it's not just driver's license issues, right? Where we have these issues, where some public servant is basically doing this. They might not actually physically doing it. It's implied in their stance, in their demeanor, or what they say indirectly. So I don't know if I want to see entertainment industry regulated, but certain consumer protections and certain protections for the various stakeholders, including for the promoter, right? But I mean, I don't know if this should be high on the agenda of any parliament, to be honest. There's so much more legislation. For example, a lot of criminal justice stuff that needs to be looked at. So, yeah. And even then, it's one thing for criminal justice. The government has to do that. You can't have private business do that. But to now have the government step in on the entertainment industry, that's assuming that they will implement good legislation efficiently. What could go wrong there? Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll welcome the good lady and switch gears on the conversation. Stay tuned. This is Talking About the WESN show. Michael Small will be right back after this.
Struggling with heart health or frequent migraines? Discover the simple steps to reclaim your energy and vitality.
We're diving into a topic that affects about 422 million people around the world. Diabetes.
Tune into Wellness Unlocked, the series that delivers expert advice, practical tips, and inspiring stories to help you take control of your health and well-being. Your health matters. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and take the first step toward better health.
I am Dr. Delphina Ovid, your friendly neighborhood dentist. At Community Hospital Dental Clinic, we offer examinations which include x-rays, basic oral cancer screening, and a treatment plan. We also offer cleanings, fillings, extractions, root canal treatment, and complete and partial dentures. Remember, you don't have to brush and floss all your teeth, just the ones you want to keep.
Give us a call at 235-5479.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
As always, we appreciate you starting your day with us. Let's get into this morning's first conversation.
Is the country's healthcare system more at risk more than ever?
Why it has remained unaddressed for so long.
Political parties get lots of cash, big cash from financiers, and then when they get that now, you can't account for it.
But it's really the specialist nurses who we are in a greater shortfall for.
We can tap into the resources and have them, at least form some mentorship programs.
Highlight our food systems, and which will attract persons from all over the world to come and experience something that actually supports the local economy.
We're lucky that we have a vibrant legal system that allows change to take place, and it's not that matters are just swept under the carpet and discrimination is allowed to be perpetrated.
A lot of people don't know that, there were attempts to ban the carnival, suppress the carnival.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title, it's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
I'm back here and talking about the WSN Content Capital show. Michael Small, joined by the good lady herself, someone whose background is directly pertinent to the topic that we have today, despite the fact that she doesn't like the whole introduction, so I'll reframe, but you know what I'm talking about, because once we get the topic, you'll understand completely, right? We ain't talking about law stuff. We ain't talking about political stuff, although it touches on both technically. Karen Teixeira, welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Sean, as usual. I'm always happy to be here. And yes, you viewers, if you think we have a good relationship in terms of professionally, yes, we do. Sometimes it gets a little heated, but it's all good.
I mean, I don't know, I honestly don't know how many other shows would say that they've had a regular contributor at least once a week for like 4 to 5 years, coming on 5 years now. So it's just one of those things about our industry. It doesn't seem like much, but then our industry is so small that to some extent that's not a small accomplishment, so.
Well, yeah. Thanks for that, but I'll just say very briefly on that. I don't think I have any cocoa in the sun. I don't have any alliance to anything but the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and I've always had that since I was at law school and wrote the textbooks, where there was no pressure on me to do it. So what you're seeing is what you get, and it's my way to contribute. So that's about it. So the topic today is, of course, the media review, which is due on June the 18th, Wednesday, June the 18th, which is 2 weeks from now. So we were talking about what we would want to speak about, and I think that speaking on the TTRA or Stand Your Ground legislation, potential or proposed legislation, may be a little bit too premature. So I want to see what the version that is going to be produced by the Attorney General before I make any sort of contribution or any my opinion on the matter. So we're looking at the media review, and just as what the term indicates, when you're looking at a media review, is exactly that. You have pass the budget, and now when you say pass the budget, I know sometimes we think the budget statement is the budget, but the appropriation bill is the legal document and the legal basis upon which the government of the day has given a legal authority to appropriate from the consolidated fund into which all revenues are initially deposited, and to be able to run the government for another fiscal year. So the fiscal year usually begins in September. The latest it can go to October. I'm sure many of us remember years ago when Mr. Pandey was in office. I'm sure you remember that, or you read about it anyway, when 4 of his ministers said that they were not supporting him for whatever reason, but that's not the point. The point is because they didn't, he did not have the simple majority to pass the appropriation bill, which is necessary to run the country, at least, and so that he had to call an election. That's what caused the election to be called. Okay, so you can't underestimate the importance of getting your appropriation bill passed. Now, you need a simple majority. And so this is done, and last year it was done. The fiscal year begins in September, usually, and it runs to the next year, September. So it's not an annual thing. It's a year, but the year doesn't begin at the end of the year. It begins in September, early September. So what it involves, I think most of people would understand that when the budget is read and the appropriation bill, which appropriates funds to ministries and divisions and departments, including the Judiciary, Office of the Integrity Commission, the Police Service Commissions, and Industrial Court, Office of the Prime Minister, those are included. When that is done, it is done on a projected revenue, what you project the revenue to be. And we still use oil, although we're not really an oil-producing economy, but we more rely on natural gas. What you project the price to be plus the level of production. They both go hand in hand. And in reality, you have a budget division that takes up a whole floor in the Ministry of Finance, and that is their job. That they are looking at the movement of prices, they're looking at the movement, so that by the time you're ready for the budget, they can give you a fair indication. I hope they can. I hope it's not just the minister. Certainly was not the case in my case. I defer to their technical expertise in the area. That's what they did. You determine what you project the price of oil and natural gas to be. In addition, based on energy numbers, you can also know what you anticipate the production level. So they go hand in hand. And based on that, that forms the basis really of what your revenue take for the fiscal year will be. And then the expenditure is not that difficult to come to, in the sense that, there's not going to be much changes from the year before. As you can see it yourself, you see national security, health, and education always at the top of the pyramid in terms of allocations, budgetary allocations. Now, if the government of the day, which is, you have to understand a budget statement from the minister is the literature. It's the literature to accompany the hard numbers, which is contained in the appropriation bill, which is what has to be passed in order for it to become law and for the government of the day to be legally authorized to transfer from the consolidated fund allocations to the ministries and also allocations to the Infrastructure Development Fund, and according to the legislation that governs the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, transfer monies to those funds. And there's also the Green Fund. The noteworthy thing about the IDF, Infrastructure Development Fund, as well as the HSF Fund, which is really an investment vehicle, every ministry has to return to the consolidated fund at the end of the fiscal year any monies that were unspent. But the Infrastructure Development Fund, they don't. They keep that, whatever is unspent stays in that fund. And the idea is you want to build up the fund because the fund is used for highways, schools, hospitals, big projects. And it is always supplemented by the relevant ministry, whether it's education, works and transport, health. But you want to build it up so you don't rely so much on the allocation for that fiscal year. And then the HSF is an investment vehicle. So whatever monies are deposited into the HSF are not returned. There's no returning. It's invested for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And it's really considered it's really considered an expenditure. It's covered as an expenditure in the budget because you are putting money out of the fund and not returning it to the consolidated fund.
Right.
Most people don't realize that. And in any event, so that's really some of the bases upon which a budget is determined. So the Minister of Finance of the day is hopefully going to reflect not his views about, people put so much emphasis on the Minister of Finance. Yes, he's the one or she's the one that goes to the Parliament and gives you the literature of the budget. But they are not the ones that decide, or he or she does not decide how the government spending occur. It is supposed to be the strategic vision, whether it is Vision 2020, Vision 2030, whatever you want to say that thank you, Joe.
Well, I'm not too sure, but whatever you want to attribute it to?
Yes, or what you want to connect it to, really.
Or connect it to.
Yes, so it really is supposed to reflect the government, because a budget is a finite pie. You don't, you have a finite pie.
Because just to expand on that, a vision would kind of say, what are you looking to put your resources in? What are you looking to prioritize?
Exactly.
So, but the budget is not necessarily a vision statement. So when you say connected to, like, what is the overall philosophy that would be stated or unstated?
Right.
Because the last administration never really stated one. We could only read the tea leaves on that.
Right, okay. And in fact, they said that a 2030 strategic plan, but it is really supposed to be connected to the strategic plan of the government of the day, and it's reflected in the allocations. So you may find, for example, in education, if you want to put more emphasis on skills training or tertiary education in your strategic plan for that, because you want to move it to a knowledge economy, which was the case when Mr. Manning was there, then the allocation, you've got two ministries, one of education, one of tertiary. So it reflected that, and the allocations reflected that. If you decided that this government, has never happened, would focus on tourism, then you see a higher, so you could see from the allocation, the government is putting more emphasis on tourism.
So that's why when we say it's lip service to diversification and tourism, it's because we can look at the budget and see the agriculture allocation, the tourism allocation, and the trade and industry allocation, and they're like, where is the focus of resources for that?
So the talk is good,
yeah,
and saying all the wonderful things, but then you have to look at the allocation.
Because to your point, the budget statement will include some of that talk.
Yes, that's what it does. I remember the former governor of the central bank did say to me, he says the budget statement is the literature which is related to the technical or the numbers that you look at. So when the minister stands up and talks, he is supposed to be indicating what the strategic plan is, or the continuation of that strategic plan, what changes have been made, what priorities may have changed along the way, because things do change along the way. So that's what the budget will really try to do.
So now that's the budget, which technically would have been passed by the previous administration last year.
And that is why.
Now we're coming up to the mid-year budget review, which is not the same thing. Although one wonders if the population is kind of looking at this somehow to be where the current administration might put their stamp, their identity on the budget. But it's not quite so simple compared to when they have their first full budget to present, right?
True, but I will say it's different, and I anticipate it will be different because there's a change of government. Now, if it was the same government in office, the mid-year budget review would really be giving an account of an update of the current state of the financial state, the revenue position, the expenditure position. Because remember, when you say what you are saying the revenue is going to be, it is projected based, as I said, on oil and gas prices and the production levels, and so you get that figure. And then you get a figure saying what your expenditure will be, which is more or less, you can anticipate it. Now, I would say that in the energy sector, there is diversification within the energy sector. Right? It's not only the Port Lisa's industrial estate, but I know that there were plans to go further up the value chain to go to polypropylene and polyethylene. Mr. Mann used to say that all the time. But it's really plastics, right? And so we must remember that even though we say too much emphasis on energy, there is diversification within the energy sector. So we can't leave that out as part of the diversification efforts,
Well,
no, it's an important part.
I understand, but I guess you could say that then, like, there may be different classifications or levels to it.
There's a value going up the chain.
Yes, but to some extent, the need for diversification is in part to prepare us for when the oil and gas runs out.
Absolutely,
Although,
that's true.
to be fair, if we go up the value chain, potentially we could source the raw materials from other regional providers. So it's not in the long run a bad. Yeah.
I'm not actually determined on. I can't project, right? And we can't say yes or no. But I'm saying you can't really put it all on the basis of having natural gas, because that makes your cost of production lower. But we have the expertise of several years over any country that wants to go into this business, and we have the technical, the experience in it, so we have an advantage, and I think we could monetize that advantage, but that's going on.
And look, it's still going to earn us foreign exchange. It might earn us less, but still anything is better than nothing. I think Singapore provides financial services. It's not as though they have the raw materials of the finances.
They have nothing.
They have nothing.
They don't even have water.
That's just to show that providing the service can be valuable if you do it well.
Right.
Back to the media.
Yes. So usually just updating what the position is, because I do recall when we were in government, when I was part of the government, when we did the budget, it was anticipated, and realistically so, even from the World Bank. They had said that. At that time, it was that gentleman who got himself in a bit of trouble. Anyhow, I can't remember his name now. But in any event, I spoke to him, and it was anticipated at least stay at $100. Well, January was $23.
Right.
My God.
Yeah.
That was the global financial crisis. Yeah. And on top of that, on top of the global financial crisis, we had our own financial crisis with CL Financial. And so we had to go back to the Parliament early in January or February rather than in mid-May. But so mid-May, June, which is when it happens. Now, the government usually does it in May. But this one, obviously, because there's been a change of government, we're doing it in June. So having said you're updating the country where the revenue position is, where the expenditure position is, and what you have already stated beforehand, because you already know, in a sense, based on the numbers you have, whether you're going to have a deficit, more expenditure than revenue, where you're going to have a surplus, more revenue than expenditure, or very rarely a balanced budget where it evens off. I don't know many instances of balanced budget.
But like I think in the last year, maybe this year, we're looking at a $10 billion deficit.
That's what they see. That's what, that's what is anticipated. Yeah. But I don't know to what extent. When I see
last year we know what it was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the year is not finished.
Yeah, the year is not finished.
And not only the year not finished, but when you look at gas prices, I didn't check it today, but it was $3.70-something US dollars per MMBTU, which is the measurement they use. And I think I said it wrong before. I was saying $3. It's not $3 was the budget price projected. It was $3.59.
Right.
So anything above $3.59 is a surplus position. So I don't know. I don't want to anticipate.
You don't have what? Yeah.
Right? Okay. So going back to the point is that so you therefore have to make adjustments. It may be you're making more. 2022, we certainly knew that we were going to get a surplus.
Right.
So you can give more to ministries. Now, that is something that happens in the media review. And then you give an update on projects, give an update on legislation very briefly, because you would have stated these projects before, the TTRA, the property tax, the gambling commission, transfer pricing, the whole one where you've been hearing about it for 10 years. And then you'd hear what the position is with the Ministry of Education, any additional, or Ministry of Health, any ministry, additional funds being allocated to the ministry, and that can happen. Or you can say that you have to pull back. So that's what the media review gives you a good indication what to expect when the budget is read in September and the appropriation bill, it has to be passed by the Parliament. This year, however, I do not anticipate it will take the same format that it has done in the last 9.5 years, and that's because there's been a change of government, and the government wants to put its stamp on relation to its economic and political policies and how it sees its giving effect to the changes and the policies that they want to implement. And you do that through legislation, and you do that through funding. You have to fund these projects. So I anticipate this year, first, it will read probably more like a budget, a mini budget, than a mid-year budget, because it's a new government.
Then a mid-year review.
Mid-year review.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So they're not they're going to start the transition potentially as much as possible now.
They have to.
Yeah.
I think they have to, because I think a lot of people, is a little over a month they are in office, and people want to hear in a more cohesive, coherent way how this government intends to.
Well, but question, it's only going to be less than 2 months.
Yeah.
Is it kind of short to try to make too many big changes? Because the next budget is due in September. Not to say that they should just leave the status quo 100%. They could make changes. But it is a very short space of time to make a lot of major decisions, or no?
I don't know if they're going to make changes so much as to put their stamp on their governance policies and the way that they intend to manage the country. And this is the first opportunity in a parliamentary setting that the government, this current government, will have that opportunity. So I anticipate at the very inception, relying on when UNC wins, the country wins kind of thing. I mean, they're not going to use that because that's politically charged, so you're not going to use that. But it will reference that approach, and they will try at the very least, because this is the only opportunity they will have until the September to come out and engage with the public in a way that they'll be able to say, listen, it's early days, but you can't say that you don't have an idea where you'll be going. You can't say that you don't know where your policy, you campaigned on that, so you know you're getting a chance. And you have to understand, being out of office and in office is a different thing, and people understand that, so you're going to be careful.
So my next question to that is, I guess the Ministry of Finance personnel, they potentially had to do like a quick change within the last, because they went from one government to another. So I would imagine they'll be kind of working overtime to try to facilitate whatever the new administration wants to do.
I'm not so sure. See, that's the thing I was saying at the beginning, which always puzzled me. The amount of power that seemed to be vested in the former Minister of Finance. I don't mean the one that was there as the former permanent secretary. I mean the one that Colin Imbil. Because that was never my understanding. We're all ministers. The one who really is in charge of the direction of the economy is the Prime Minister.
No, but what I mean is, the government makes the direction, the Prime Minister makes the direction, so but someone has to help fill in the details now.
Yes, but it's going to be, what I will say is that I don't know if they could change too much on the course of what they have done or what they would have done if the other administration was still in power in terms of the numbers. I don't know that there's much wiggle room. And if there is, it's for the government to make that decision. So I get the impression they're going to put far more resources in agri and agribusiness, which I'm very, very happy to hear about. So you may find that they may make a broad statement and they may say to you when, but I am not part of the government, what I'm saying, the division of the budget division is there to give direction. They don't run the country, and they don't say the policies. And so there's a constraint on the government based on the monies that they have available to them and their ability to borrow. Because they borrowed a lot, the former government. I mean, when Mr. Manning was there, I know I always reference it, but that's my reference point. When we were there, you hardly ever borrowed on the international market. You borrowed a little bit. You know why? Because you wanted to maintain a presence on the international market. So when the rating agencies like Standard & Poor's rated you, they could see that you paid back your bonds.
It's similar to a personal credit rating. If you don't have any loans or credit cards or anything, then you have no rating.
Right. So in fact, what I had prepared this for something else. So the external debt up to in 2015 was US 2.5 billion. Under this government, it raised to 5.2 billion in 2023. So that is unusual, and that's because the government was borrowing all over the place. Right now, does the Minister of Finance have that authority to do that? I mean, maybe he did, but usually the Prime Minister is the Minister of Finance. Because he is the one to make sure that whatever policies that he wanted, that collectively the Cabinet had agreed to, is implemented by way of the allocation of funds, because you could have all the most wonderful ideas. If you don't have the funding, it's just a good idea. So in any event, so I anticipate that we're going to see something more like a mini budget. So the first thing they're going to probably do is give a broad statement. The Minister Tanku must give a broad statement of what they have met. They're going to do that.
Yes.
They have to do that.
They've already started in a small way with one of their press conferences.
I hope they don't do too much of that, but they're going to do that, What you saying?
No, finish off your point.
Yeah, so they're going to do that, and then after they do that and tell you the parlous state of the economy and the inefficiencies, the irresponsibility, all that good stuff. They're going to have to do that. I mean, the other government did that for nearly every budget for about 4 or 5. You heard about that story.
Yeah.
My God. Anyhow, sorry. I didn't want to say my God. But in any event, so you're going to definitely hear that. And then you're going to have this opportunity for them to give their stamp as how they see themselves governing and the issues, areas that they think. So if she talks about diversification, the minister, who is speaking on behalf of the cabinet, who is speaking on behalf of the prime minister, because he is or she is the minister of finance. So that's who want to talk.
Yeah.
Right? So, but that is not his or her ideas. It's the cabinet collective idea headed by the prime minister. As this is how you have a CEO or chairman of a board. Right. It is equivalent to that. So your responsibility is to present something to the country. And so I expect that some of the things that they will have to address is to give the details of expenditure, and then they will speak, I believe, on major projects which they have already started talking about. That's TTRA,
right?
Property tax.
Well, yes.
Yes, TTRA, property tax, stand your ground legislation, the refinery. I expect they're going to say something about that, because those are the hot topic items, and people are going to want to hear how the government intends to, even if it's not a full-fledged statement, they are going to mention it and give more details when they are in September. But they are going to, I imagine, mention that.
Okay.
Do you want to say?
No, well, we need to take a break, right? And we'll continue the conversation, but we have to take a break right now. Stay tuned. When we come back, of course, the conversation continues, and then we will also open up the phone lines, talking point on WSN. We'll be right back after this.
Feeling drained? Struggling to keep up? It's time to take control of your wellness. On this episode of Wellness Unlocked, we're diving into the key nutrients your body needs for all-day energy and balance, with 100% or more of your daily essential vitamins, plus added chromium to support healthy blood sugar. This is complete wellness in a single soft gel. Join us as we uncover how small changes can make a big impact on your health. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and take the first step toward better health.
My name is Dr. Joanne Williams-Carroll, and I am the Director of Behavioral and Mental Health at the Community Hospital. At the Community Hospital, we believe in nurturing mind, body, and soul. Through our counseling and chaplaincy program, we will provide you with support and strength you need to help with your mental and emotional well-being. Give us a call.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
I'm back here on talking about a WSND Contact Show. Michael Small with the good lady of self-kindness to share, talking about the upcoming mid-year budget review, which during a time of transition of power between one political party to the next, might have a different flavor than before. Part of why we're explaining this in advance is to try to set up, to manage the expectations of the population so that you don't necessarily have unrealistic hopes of what could happen in what is technically a mid-year review, but as Karen said, might end up kind of being a mini budget in some ways. What money is there for the end of the year is you know, you can't change that. What you can change is, one, your messaging, but two, make some adjustments with some decisions where there is flexible, where possible, right? And then it all depends on, as she pointed out, the strategic plan for the government, who they campaigned somewhat successfully on a certain strategic vision, not necessarily saying that they told us all of their ideas, and they already started talking to us about what they found in the economy and said, wait for the mid-year budget review when certain chips may fall, certain dominoes may fall, and certain things may come out. Also, still waiting on the Auditor General report for last year, right? But it is what it is. Now, if with the mid-year budget review coming up, I guess there was some points you were trying to make, or they were
No, I was just going to say, maybe from my own experience in government, and I don't think it's any different for whoever was the minister. And in fact, Section 113 of the Constitution does provide for the Minister of Finance being responsible for preparing the budget, the draft estimates, and to request that information from the various ministries and departments. That's in the legislation. But I think what I really did want to emphasize, and maybe that's coming from a political position, but I don't see anything wrong with that, because politics, you want to say what's different about you, because clearly we weren't happy with the other one. So what is it that you're going to do and that is going to be different? What is your policy outlook, your broad policy outlook? We agree that it can't be done in June this year, but certainly by the budget date in September, that will happen. But I do think they are going to spend some time on saying what the financial, the economic situation was that they met, because people want to hear that. There's a certain level of, I don't know, you feel hard done by, you feel that things were not done, and you feel that, you feel, that you want to get some level of satisfaction, for want of a better word, to hear what people suspected or may be or may not be true. So that's one thing, but I think the government really is going to try to outline very broadly what it is going to be its approach, and that it is going to try to inject into its budget, its review, a positive message, because that has been coming from the Prime Minister. Definitely, we will fix it, we will find the money. And so I think we're going to hear some of that, and I think it's going to try to give an optimistic look at how the economic situation in Trinidad will be managed by this new government. I think we're going to hear some of that. I think that's going to be more of the focus, and of course the major, which she has spoken about very early on, TTRA, stand your ground, the refinery, also too the natural gas. Where are we getting this natural gas from? I think they may or may not. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know if they want to go into too much detail. I don't know. I'm not there sitting behind.
One of the things I find interesting in this budget, we had certain line items or certain special mentions of selling Magdalena and the refinery, and some of them kind of been forgotten. But the point is, it was selling assets to try to make up the deficit, and none of it was done. So part of what's interesting is, how is the current administration going to address that, given that part of the strategy to address the expected deficit was not achieved, and we only have a few months to go basically towards the end, and they already said, well, we're $4 billion in a hole just from May alone. So what does June, July, August look like? I have no idea. We have a call on the line, so we'll take the call. Good morning, caller. You on the air?
Morning.
Morning.
Morning. I heard something about loans from 2015 to the end of this government's period, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would like to know, why has this loan situation deteriorated to this thing? Is there a reason? I don't find that borrowing everywhere and anywhere is a reason. I find there must be some reason for loans to reach that position. Plus, when the situation as it exists now, that is found in the arm, whatever the place is consolidated, fund or whatever, how could it reach there? What are the things that could cause that to happen? You know, so the matter, the balance between what we get, what we own, and what we have to spend, does that have anything to do with this?
Well, you continue or you want me to respond?
Thank you, caller.
Okay, I will say that the fact that they withdrew from 2016 to December 2023, and the last one they didn't reveal it, that is the Minister of Finance, having changed the Heritage Stabilization Amendment Act to give them more ability to withdraw funds from the HSF fund, $18 billion, and then going on the international market and borrowing money twice as much as they'd ever done, as well as all the other carrying on of debt, that when you look at what it was done for, recurrent expenditure. And what is recurrent expenditure? Paying salaries. Paying salaries, keeping the social welfare program, and very little for capital expenditure. So if I have to answer why they borrowed so much, every which way they could, and what it was used for, then it seems to me it was more political than anything else. Wanting to keep this narrative and this thing afloat that things were not as bad as people were saying, because they were raising money on the international market out of the Heritage and Stabilization Fund over that period of time and borrowing on the local market in order to finance your debt. And in fact, in one of the articles I had, this gentleman, I can't remember the name of the but it was a very good article, I mentioned it before, when the government of the previous government, the debt profile was 114 billion, representing, I think, 73% of the GDP. In any case, it has raised to 141 billion. And where has that money gone? Yes, some hospitals were built, some things were done with the highway, but when you ask yourself where all that money went and for what it was used, then you have to believe that it was used more to keep this government afloat and to give the impression that all was well, although everything pointed in the opposite direction.
Because last year they took a loan for, I can't remember, I think it might have been 5 billion TT.
Just before.
Right, towards the end of the fiscal year last year. Now the foreign exchange, it was a 2-for-1, so it was smart in a way, but not sustainable at the end of the day, because they were trying to make...
What is smart about it?
Well,
I'm asking seriously.
It was a foreign loan, so it helped with our foreign exchange position as well. But just by the way. But the problem is you can't keep doing that, right? Because they were doing it to try to make up the deficit in the budget last year. The unexpected part of it, I think they went in with the budget statement of the last financial year saying we'll have a $5 billion deficit. That was planned. And then by the mid-year budget review, it's like, oh, well, now the deficit is $11 billion. We need more money, right? So you could do it once, and it might be smart if you do it once, you get away with it. But it seems as though we're on pace to have to do it every year, and that's going to add up. Well, we can't pay back all these loans.
Well, I will say this to what you've said. For every single year, and before this government, but certainly not to the extent to which some of the years we saw the deficit, except for 2022, we always ran a significant, except for maybe 1 year or so, we ran a significant deficit. In other words, there was only 1 year that did not happen. Okay, so when you look at, you know what it is like? You know what that is like? It's if you own a business and you want your family to believe that all is well with the business, what you do is you keep on borrowing, because if you have a deficit budget, it means your expenditure is more than your revenue.
You want to maintain the lifestyle.
And you want to maintain, and you want the children to feel everything is good. So what they do is the expenditure, where are you going to finance that expenditure? And what this government has done is, the former government, is to finance that expenditure, they took on so much debt to the point that I don't know where the money is going to come from, and in the light of no diversification, that's an awful word, no diversification, this obsession with dragon fee, which I understand to some extent, but you know, let's be real. Let's be real about it. No diversification, nothing that you could see that was revenue earning to take us out of this hole. So if you were running a business, your family would ask you, well, how are we going to pay back all this debt? Don't worry, things okay, man. You going on your vacation as usual, and you're doing this. What you worrying about?
And we need to understand, this happens in real life. I literally know of I don't want to get into details because I don't want to put people's business out there, but I literally know of a situation where someone tried to do that. And we assume, oh, well, why would they do that? That doesn't seem smart. They don't always think about the long-term consequences.
But they thought about it because they want to stay in power.
No, my point is, when you make these decisions, you're not always thinking about the long-term consequences. You're thinking about the short-term, and I need to patch this together, right?
Right.
Because here's the thing, Caller, and I was reminded by our conversations yesterday on this. Inflation. Most people only think about inflation as, well, my cost of living goes up. We don't also think, oh, well, the cost of government to pay for things technically goes up, right? And that's one of the larger macro areas where inflation could be quite harmful to our country, because some people would say, look, it's the same expenditure, the same size budget as what the partnership had. So how is it? I remember somebody asked me this. How is it that they don't have enough money? Well, it's because that was 2010 to 2015. This is 2015 to 2025. Inflation happened. And the HSF not growing is a bad sign, because the purchasing power of the money in the HSF is reduced because of inflation. The budget, potentially, revenue not growing, right? And the budget itself not growing is also not a good sign, because we're not getting the same amount of goods and services for that expenditure that the partnership did, right? But what makes it worse is that we're also having to borrow to keep that level up there. So there's a lot to this that is potentially very, 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 very bad.
You're sounding like Trump, you know.
Because
that's how Trump speaks.
It's very bad. It's very bad. But because, as Karen is pointing out, you see, and this is one of the things that I know we have a call, but just because we look at debt to GDP, that's why the debt. Notice how the debt is like twice the size of a national budget, right? Now, it's not expecting you to pay off the debt in a year, right? But it also potentially points to the fact that the government now, its limited capacity to do projects because of inflation, because we're just trying to hold strain, but we're not. We're really not. That's why they had to have cuts, and that's why it seemed like the government never had enough money, because it might be still $55 to $60 billion, but it's not worth the same as during the partnership's time. So GDP now, the growth of the GDP is going to be impacted, and that is a bad thing when it comes to paying off your foreign debt, because you need your GDP to be a certain level and to have growth in order to finance deficit spending of a government.
You sound like an economist.
Well, I do a lot of reading. Okay, we have 2 callers on the line at least, so we'll take the first call, I think, from Marima. Caller, good morning. Sorry for the wait. You're on the air.
Good morning to you and Mrs. Teixeira.
Morning.
No, I want you to understand this, because I learned this many years ago when I was on campus.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of the development of this country was done through loans. So if you look at all the junior sects that were built in the late 70s, most of the highways, most of the projects that we do in this country, as a matter of fact, the Point 14 highway was one of the few that we built out of pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why it had all that controversy with it. Now, what we have to remember is this. You're not only looking at diversification, you also have to look at ways we could save money and cut out this wastage.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is, for me, the wastage is a bigger problem as the diversification. We have to try and get value for the money that we're spending with some of these contracts. Take, for example, this nonsense with this ambulance in Tobago. That's something horrible. And at a time when all the state agencies, everybody under-equipped, they're understaffed and they're underpaid, it's time for us to pull up our socks and get serious in this place. Thank you.
Now, I am unsure if the price is reasonable, the 17 million, but I will say this, and this happened a long time ago. But let's just say the ambulance response that I saw in Tobago one time was better than the ambulance response I saw in Trinidad one time. All right, we have the other call to take, so we'll take the call. Good morning, caller.
And I want to respond to what he said afterwards.
Yes, I too, but you could respond after the call and then I'll respond.
Okay.
After you. Caller, good morning.
Hello?
Morning, you're on the air, caller. Go ahead.
Yeah, back again. Sorry, good morning.
Morning.
I heard your answer. And I want to understand, how will this change? How do we diversify without the money? We don't have the money. We're not making the money. We have to diversify to make money. How things like that go about? Because I think our thinking, somewhere or the other, something is wrong with our thinking, our attitudes, and things like that. Because I was listening this morning. I hear somebody say something like, a man has 200 demerit points. It shows that the demerit point system is not working. You really believe it's the demerit point system that's not working?
Well, that's a good, that's a good thing to say. Yes, you're right.
I don't believe that it's the demerit point system not working. There are a lot of things I hear that are not working.
Yeah.
And nobody is saying that they are not working. Nobody is doing anything that is reasonable to get things working. My idea of a police commissioner, a new one, a good one, is what he does first, what he says first. And if he isn't speaking about what is going on in that department, in that place, and how he is going to make an effort to clear it up, because he knows he has been coming up, these people have been coming up through the ranks, they know what is going on. And nobody is saying, hello, we will have to do so. And you don't have a plan, you cannot get a plan. I mean, whoever will get a plan, I don't know, because I know the people of whose names are not, you know, slave masters' names, they can't make plans.
Of course.
That government couldn't make a plan. How do you make a plan to handle this situation and you call it political? That here what happening? I have to keep people working. You want people to work. You keep people working. Your bill, as far as I understand the bill, the last thing I heard was $2.2 billion in salaries, $2.6 billion in debt repayment. How are you going to overcome that? What is your plan? My plan is this, that I am not going to do that in what is necessary to do. But sooner or later, I will have the IMF tell the people in Trinidad and Tobago what to do. I am not going to take that responsibility. I call that political. You understand?
Yeah.
So I am going to continue along my merry way, making decisions, hiring people, so that the bill goes down. You understand? This salaries bill will go down if I hire more people. If I refuse to cut WASA, this bill will go down. If I cut away the TTRA, I will collect more taxes. Everything they do is without, you stop the demerit point system. Oh gosh, if you have to change it, you don't need consultation for that. It's simple to decide, well, I find I shouldn't give a man a ticket or a point for so and so. You cut out that. You leave what is necessary. No set of argument necessary for that. Nobody arguing. If the people don't know how to express themselves, that shouldn't be a problem. It should be obvious that the merit point system needs to be there. This is Trinidad and Tobago. People do all kind of things. They climb over walls to go to funerals. Go on.
I mean, this is, thank you, caller. With regards to the 200 points, I think we're not disagreeing that much, but with regards to the need of the demerit point system, that hasn't necessarily been proven to me that we need it, because the implementation and the management of it doesn't seem to be working well enough. And I'll just leave that there. Like, it's similar to the El Salvador incarceration model. Are you willing to see innocent people suffer, or people suffer too harsh of a penalties because of the extreme end of the behavior that you want to curtail? It's not too dissimilar to that. And I think at this point, my answer to that will generally be no. We have another call. We'll take the call, but then we need some time to try to respond to 2 calls ago. Karen is already having notes there to talk, and so do I. But we'll take the call first. Good morning, caller, you're on here.
Yes, Sean, good morning to you and Mr. Scherer. I'll be very brief. If someone runs their home, in the finances of their home, the way the last government ran Trinidad and Tobago, that home will collapse because we were running the deficit budgets for the last 10 years except for 2022. I will listen off here.
Thank you, caller. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to respond to the person who said that with the borrowing, he said that borrowing finance all the big projects, and nobody's disagreeing with that. But what I did say, when I was asked, if we want to know what the borrowing was used for, it's to be used for recurrent expenditure.
As opposed to
capital
those
expenditure. It's
right.
Right. That is the point. It has been you.
I just want to re-emphasize that. Karen is saying, recurring expenditure is what's current. Back when what you were speaking about was capital expenditure, so that there's no uncertainty. Those are two different things.
And that has been the use that they have made to the borrowing that this government has taken on, and it has been to finance salaries and the social programs, which I am not against at all, but very little for capital expenditure. So that's a non sequitur. They do not follow each other. So that's the first point. The second point is the extent to which this government has dug us into a hole without looking at means to reduce our debt profile, but increasing it every year. And the former Minister of Finance seemed to have been a law unto himself. He seemed to be doing what he wanted. The Prime Minister seemed, I'm being honest with you, I think he was allowed to do what he wanted, because you didn't see much intervention from the Prime Minister. And this gentleman, Mr. Colin Booth, smiling and seemed very happy with himself, seemed to be borrowing us into so much debt that he had to go to the international market in a way that had never been done, not only from 2015, but before that. We hardly borrow on the international market. And the point I would want to make is that how do we deal with it? We have already heard from Minister Sawat Singh. You can take out loans from IDB. There are other funding mechanisms that are available. If you're going to take an approach that nothing can be done, then nothing will be done. But you can't take that approach. I mean, you have so many countries, and one of the ways is cut down our food bill. Why do we have to spend $7 billion bringing in food when we have a lot of agricultural land? We have a faculty of agriculture. We have a ministry of agriculture. The start of the University of Wesn, St. Augustine, was an agricultural the Imperial College of Agriculture. So there's no end of opportunity for us to reduce our food bill, not only reduce the food bill, but what we import. I go to the supermarket like everybody else, and I see things that must be have gone far past the expiry date, things that people are not buying. And if you want to buy it, pay for it. That's what, at $7 billion. That's a big chunk. And that's a year, every single year. And so don't say that there are not mechanisms. And you have to ask yourself, when it comes to the foreign exchange reserves, when you look at the 13 banks or institutions, why is one of them giving 2 bites of the cherry and one of them is a merchant bank? What is a merchant bank? It is not involved in producing. It is involved in buying and selling from abroad, selling to us, and where does the money go? It does not trickle down into the economy. That is a fallacy. The former Prime Minister talked about nothing wrong with the rich getting richer because of that. That has been, what is the word I want to use? It has been debunked, this Friedman theory of the Chicago boys, which said deregulate, 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 and allow the market to right itself and that the money will trickle down. It did not happen. It didn't happen with Thatcher. It didn't happen with Reagan. What do you need to know? That don't think that there's one size fits all. There are solutions, and we as a country need to support it. We need to support the effort because at the end of the day, we are the ones that benefit. And the final thing I want to say, why? We have a caller?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize. I thought it was you trying to get in.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. You see that? You know why? You know why? I want to say, this thing keeps falling out.
Well, actually, no, it was messaged to me. It wasn't told to me.
Okay.
So, but we have San Fernando on the line.
Good morning, Sean.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Mr. San Fernando, but things fell out.
Okay, I might need to just show something behind. Yeah, so Karen can hear. Hold on, Mr. San Fernando.
Yeah, I don't have anything.
Oh, my own stuff is falling off now. All right.
All
there
right.
you go.
That's why. Sorry, my apologies.
Okay.
I didn't know you were there.
Okay, Mr.
Good morning,
Santana,
Joan.
yes.
Good morning, Karen. No. I was listening attentively in the background.
Okay.
Now, when you have when you're approaching your jet to GDP ratio close to 100%, or you're approaching 100%, and you are not seeing any tangible efforts to increase your foreign exchange earnings, one, to reduce your debts, two, then you're in trouble. What I am afraid of is that the Joe Blow regular man in the street, which is the majority of the population of Trinidad and Tobago, has no understanding of where the country is financially, the position we are in right now. They don't know. Because when you listen, even some of the callers, people still expect the government to do all these different things. What this government has to try to do first is to try and balance the budget.
Yeah.
Get spending in line with earnings. And that is going to cause some manner of discomfort. And I'm trying to use nice words here. Some manner of discomfort in the population. And none of them want discomfort. If it is things like cutting back on the size of the public service and showing up the utilities, and other things that decision not to get rid of the property tax. Those are some of the decisions that are really needed. The increase in the electricity rates, an increase in water rates from the Water and Sewage Authority. Those are things that are needed in this country. Things like $21 in this country. Okay, yes, we have energy, but at $21 for a 20-pound cylinder of LPG, you know how many years that has been like that? Do you know how many years it has been like that? And people are not understanding their level of comfort in Trinidad and Tobago, their level of comfort financed by the state. And that has to change if they want, because we're not getting, until we find the big hole that we could get 5 TCF a day, until we find that, and until we decide that we're going to change, just as you said, Karen, until the population, with some pushing from the government, decides that they're going to change their eating habits. Because that is a serious thing. The reason why the food bill is $7 billion plus is because Trinidadians and Tobagonians, and in a smaller measure, have changed their eating habits to sort of North American import diet, and they have not understood that has a cost. It has a cost. It has a cost, and I am afraid that this Kamala Persal-Bissess's government will be afraid to tinker with what really needs to be done.
Yeah.
I'm afraid that they would be afraid to tinker, because seeing what happened with that landslide mandate that she got, I'm not sure if she really want to take on an angry population. Have a good day, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, brother. Well,
I'll let you talk first, but I have so much I could say.
Part of it would be, because the opposition is already saying, be wary of government cutting state jobs, right? And I think I'll be surprised if they do that, because you've already implied that, you've already mentioned that before. Oh, that's what fell. Something fell and I didn't realize. Ever the exciting show. I was saying, I'll be surprised, the opposition is warning that the government might cut jobs, but I'll be surprised if they do that, because similar to the PNM administration, it seems as though you want to maintain the status quo, you don't want to rock the boat, and given the fact that the current administration is in line with some of the big unions where potentially some of the most or worst excesses of state hiring and redundant hiring is occurring, I don't really see, I'll be happy if they cut the public sector wage bill. One caller pointed out it's $2 billion a month or some ridiculous figure, yeah. And I don't think we're getting a return on that expenditure. There's more that I could say, but okay, just with regards to the, because one of the things that I want to respond to was with regards to the debt position.
Yeah, that's
when in the past we used debt to finance major projects, like Karen said, it was capital projects, meaning they were long-term investment type projects, not recurring expenditure. But also you have to consider what was the financial position, because there's a difference between what Karen is saying. The family is trying to live within the same means, but it no longer can afford to, so it takes out loans to keep up appearances, as opposed to the rich person that has $200 million in the bank, but leaves it there and takes out a $200 million loan to do his business. He still has the money, but he's not using his money. He's using the bank's money, right? And depending on how you do it, that's actually one way to effectively keep your money while also having your money work for you, right? It's more complicated than that. But that is something that companies and investors do. They don't necessarily put their own money in. They might use that as collateral to take out a loan. The point is, our financial position back then would have been able to cover that debt. And what we're saying is right now, our revenue position, our debt to GDP situation, right? The ability to cover that debt successfully. Look, the HSF is both import cover and debt cover. The problem is if both things happen at the same time, we can only use it for one. So it is what it is. We're in a much more precarious financial position than what we used to be. We are not as rich as we are literally that family that is not as rich as it used to be, but we want to still, to the public, look as though we're that rich. And that is literally what's happening. The previous administration was trying to keep up appearances, as you said, Karen, to the public, because they didn't want people to panic.
I want to say, though, just 3 little points, well, not 3 little points, but I think it's important to make those points. When I said the family, the father and mother who run the business are not telling the children the truth. That's the truth, because they want to maintain a relationship with their children. Yes. So the government does not tell the people the truth because they want to stay in political power. So it's not that the people are participating or complicit in it, but they are being fooled about what their real position is. So that brings me to something that we keep saying, the GDP. I know some of you and most of you might understand and the relationship between debt and GDP, but I think it's important, and the Gini coefficient. I just want to mention those 3. And maybe next week we'll talk about inflation, how it affects you in a very personal way. So let's start with the nominal GDP. That's your value of the goods and services that a country produces, both private sector and the government, within a fiscal year, right? So when you look at that, it gives you you can get the impression, and it reflects what the market price. So if, let's use an example, which maybe a silly example, but let's say you are known for producing bicycles, which is a silly one, but anyhow, known for producing bicycles. If in last year you produced 1,000 bicycles and the market in the global market had collapsed, had gone up from what it was the previous year. So instead of getting $100 for those bicycles, you're getting $300 for those bicycles. You're producing the same amount of bicycles that you produced a year before. It will translate into the value of your goods and services, because the goods and services using the nominal GDP reflects what the actual market value of the goods. So if the market value went up $300, that means the GDP is going to look better. Not because you grew the economy, you didn't grow it, you're still producing the same amount of bicycles. You may be even producing fewer bicycles, but because the value of the goods on the international market has increased, your value of your goods and services goes up. And that can be very misleading. And the reason why you look at really the real GDP, so when any government is talking about GDP or real GDP, bear this in mind, and also GDP per capita, so you understand what it means for you, and also Finally, the Gini coefficient. Those are the 4 things, and I might mention it again next week because it's so important, right? So when you talk about the real GDP, that is when you're selling those bicycles for $300 this year. Let's say the for $300 this year, and last year you sold it for $100. And in fact, this year, instead of producing 100 bicycles, you're just producing 90. But last year you produced 100. But because the market value the year before was less, you were getting much less for those same bicycles, say the $100. And this year you're getting $300, even though you're even producing fewer bicycles. It will show as though your GDP is doing well. But when you pull out the value, when you say, no, let's look at how many bicycles you have really produced. And let's take out the change in the price of those bicycles. Let's leave it at what? As 100 bicycles you're producing. Let's take out the inflation impact and leave it at $100. And why do you want to do that? Because you want to know if your economy grew. You see, because if you're producing the same 100 bicycles, your economy did not grow.
And if it's less.
Right, and if it's less, which happened, you know.
Yeah.
It happened with the 2022 when we saw that huge increase in natural gas. We actually produced less, I don't know if less is the correct word, but anyway, less natural gas than the previous year, but the GDP showed an increase because the price had gone up. But in fact, our economy had not grown. When your economy is not growing, that means you're in trouble. And when, yes?
Just to point out, you could have a high debt to GDP ratio when your economy is consistently growing.
Exactly.
That's how the theory works, and that's how Japan and America's are above 100%, and Japan is, I think, 200%. But the economy consistently grows. It's not just large, because it's your debt to GDP ratio. It has to grow. And what Karen is saying is so important is, if our economy is not really growing, inflation might make it look like it's growing. But if it's not really growing, that's why the debt is so bad, because you can't sustain it.
The next year, you're producing 90 bicycles. You get so comfortable. And you're producing less, and the prices have collapsed. Not gone back to the $100. Guess what? Your economy, you now know for sure that your economy down. So you have to look at the real GDP. When you take out the impact of inflation, increase in the price, to see, has your economy grown? And if it has not grown, look at when we had the COVID. When we had that COVID, so you go to all the Caribbean islands, Eastern Caribbean, Jamaica. We won't use Ghana. Ghana is an outlier, right? And you look at their data, their growth figures. They recovered significantly by 2022. They had gone, some of them with 7-point-something% increase in growth, right? So that is one point. The other point is that Sean is making with the debt to GDP. You know what that means? If you produced $1 million worth of goods, but out of that $1 million you owe in $730,000, which is 73%. That means you have to pay $730,000 of that $1 million is to pay back loans. That's what it means. And unless you are growing your economy and improving your production and not buying and selling and buying and selling and bringing in things in this country and drawing on our foreign exchange, and that's what I wanted to tell you. When to Mr. San Fernando, I think you're being a little too harsh on the people of Trinidad and Tobago, because the real culprits in all of this is not the man in the street. It is not the man, because if we use what they call the Gini coefficient, which is a name by that same man from Italy, they used to use it in CSO years ago. They abandoned it, must have a good reason. What it shows is the spread of your GDP, so that suppose your country produces $150 million worth of goods and services, and there are 1 million people in the country. If they say GDP per capita means per head. So then they will say, well, if I take that $150 million and I divide it by the 1 million people in the country, it means everybody's okay, they're doing okay, US dollars. Yeah. But that's not what happens. The Gini coefficient, which is what you should be interested in doing, and I'll go back to it next week, it is a statistical, what is the language they use? I want to use the correct terminology, a statistical measure to determine income inequality. Because if you use that, you will find out that the people who are using up your foreign exchange, that's who you're supposed to be worried about, not the man working in government or WASA, which is bad enough. That's not your problem. The problem in this country, we like to deflect and distract, and they like you to deflect and distract. People who use up your foreign exchange are not reinvesting in your economy, but by putting it on stocks and shares in the international market and not bringing back that money in here. When you use the Gini coefficient, I have a feeling you will find out that of that $150 million that the country produces from your hard work too, not everybody's lazy, a lot of people work hard, right, and contribute by paying taxes, you will find of that 150 million, maybe 90% or more is in the hands of a handful of people in this country. That's who you should be concerned about. Not the PSA, because you know what? They get depressed. You look at the labor force participation rate, which I'll look at next week. You have to understand, stop putting the blame in the wrong place. Why are these people allowed to operate all these foreign, what you call it? I always talk about it.
Retail? Imports?
Not the retail. We have to have some level of retail. These franchises that are unhealthy, that are causing the, we know in Trinidad that the lifestyle diseases are the main diabetes, heart pressure, all of these things are mainly contributed to our sedentary lifestyle and what we eat. So why is the government allowing all these people to bring in all of these franchises and employ people at the lower end of the scale, make these people billions of dollars, and you do not see that translated into this country? So stop putting the blame, which they want you to do. WASA and PSC, they like you to do that. I'm not saying that's not part of the problem, but the real problem is the 5% or what percent, if they measure the Gini coefficient, you'll find where your money is going and who is using up your foreign exchange, not producing anything but retailing, and that's what you have to ask yourself. And it's time we wake up and smell the coffee like Ibrahim Traore did in Burkina Faso.
Okay, so I'll try and be quick. One of the first callers, and we didn't get to it, how did we get here? It's a combination of things, but it goes back to not diversifying. And one of the callers pointed out, you need money to diversify. That's why not diversifying in the past is potentially so bad, right? If the GDP grew, if our GDP is growing, we could keep ahead of loan payments and interest payments, and that's the theory. And if we don't do it, we're going to fall behind, and it's a hell of a thing when our government falls behind. And the implication is we are potentially going to be taking out more loans in the future, not less. So what does that mean? I don't even want to speculate it because it sounds bad and I don't have the time to go into it. But at the end of the day, we're here because we weren't necessarily responsible with regards to long-term thinking, right? With regards to long-term thinking of how we manage the economy, right? So with regards to the government, it's with regards to the fact that the private sector is not the major employer, it's the government. So private sector jobs aren't growing. And it compounds itself. It's hard for a government to say we need to clean up the redundant workers because the private sector can't absorb them overnight. So it's easy to think, oh gosh, well, we can't do that because we put people on the street. But we're using one problem to justify the continuation of another problem instead of trying to figure out how to fix it. And as Karen said, when the capital goes out of the country, the private sector is not growing. So when you're over-reliant on government to pay for everything, and the energy prices bottom out, we get what we get.
And the private sector is not willing to take the chances and invest in the
country. Since
they are not. You know, you talk about people being leeches and being parasites. I always remembered when I think the risk averse. They are risk averse. They want the government to spend, not them.
We have to wrap up, but I'll just agree with Karen in that when it's so hard to take money out and our foreign exchange position is so bad, to some extent I understand it, but at the same time, it is at least partially detrimental that all of the investment from the major conglomerates of Trinidad and Tobago, notice where they're happening it. Not a lot of it is happening here, if at all. Another franchise might open tomorrow, but we'll have to wait and see. Thanks to the callers for calling in.
Yes,
I don't think we had any comments today. So, and of course, thanks for Karen for joining me once again. The thing about this economics subject, this is something that we do need as much as possible. I don't know everything. As much as Karen said, I sound like an economist. It's to educate yourself to try to understand it so that you can make better informed decisions. It's not just about an election every 5 years, right? Try and remember that. It might seem like you don't have a lot of levers to pull in between elections, but we as a people need to figure that out ourselves. We have more power than we think if we exercise it. Karen, thank you. Folks, just reminding you to stay safe. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. Have a good day. and do so because it's nice to be nice, so you make someone else's day good, and they may just pay it back to you, or they might pay it forward. But regardless, hopefully we all have a good day so we could see each other tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-85